and update this. So this is going to be, I've done this a couple years in a row, or a couple years in the past. I don't know if I did it this year, but Porcfest is kind of like the one big libertarian event I like to do every year. There's one or two other ones, Students for Liberty. I'd like to do Mises at some year, but I've been going to Porcfest now for 8 years, since 2012, I want to say, maybe before. And it's, I mean, I like it so much that I ended up moving to New Hampshire. I've lived in New Hampshire now for over 6 years. I wasn't able to go to Porcfest for a couple years there due to work. And even though I actually worked a lot last year, I didn't work during Porcfest, so I was able to go last year. So last year was the first year in, I think, 3-4 years. And I'm going to go this year. And this year is going to be, I think, potentially one of the best and one of the most important. And I think why that is worth talking about. So I'm going to go over that. So like in the past, I would basically do like Porcfest, how to get ready, what to expect, that sort of thing. You know, if you're going to Porcfest, what do you need to be ready for it? What is it going to take to go? And I want to do one of those today. What did I call them? Porcfest Survival Guide. And this year is going to be a little bit different, so I don't know if I have any quote-unquote survival advice. So we don't know exactly if it's going to be legal this year, which is a good reason to go and actually makes it all the more important. Porcfest has always been a bastion of, I guess you could say, illegal activity. There's a lot of drugs going on, there's sex, there's vendors selling things without licenses, especially food, but basically everything. There's people working for less than minimum wage, there's child labor. Now the gun stuff is typically legal. Open and concealed carry are both legal in New Hampshire without any kind of permit for either one. So that's not necessarily illegal. You don't see it that often, and then you go to Porcfest and you see it all the time. So that's the distinction, but it's not something that's really kind of pushing the boundaries of the law if it is pushing the boundaries of convention. But since before I even started going there, there was some kind of at least tacit understanding between law enforcement, local law enforcement anyway, and the people at Porcfest to tolerate. It was not worth their effort to come and try and upset the event. And there was a point, I want to say in 2015 maybe, where a couple of state tax revenue people showed up to look for licenses. They were checking to see if the people who were vendors at Porcfest had licenses, and they were run off. They were surrounded by people who were very angry that they were there, many of whom had guns, none that were brandished. There's videos of this somewhere out there, at least there used to be, and they left. So this year, in the wake of COVID, or in the midst of COVID, we're in a very different situation. Now, I guess I should kind of talk about this. There's a lot of interesting ethical questions that come about with a pandemic, and I probably should do videos expressing them. And I don't think that there are hard and fast answers to those questions. Hey, Luke, nice to see you. I am going. Yes, I am going to Porcfest. I already bought my tickets, and we'll go into some of the details in a second. But so when COVID first came out, and the first numbers we were seeing were showing us, maybe 3 to 5% mortality rate, 15 to 20% people needing to be in intensive care. It was looking like our medical system was going to get overwhelmed, and potentially millions of people were going to die. And like, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to get sick and die, but also I thought that ethically I didn't want to contribute to the spread of a pandemic that was going to be so dangerous to a lot of people. So for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I had the food, I had stocked up, I didn't have to go to work, I didn't have to go anywhere. I stayed not only in my house, in my room, pretty much, other than going to the bathroom and cooking, and that was it. as it became clear that the death rate was probably much, much less than we want, the infection rate was higher and the death rate was lower. We still don't know the absolute numbers on this, but what we do know for a fact is that the hospitals have not been overwhelmed. Now, how much of that was because of the lockdown, that's a really good question. I'm not just going to assume that that isn't a contributing factor, but here in New Hampshire, they've never been swamped. It hasn't been bad at all, really. There's not, the people aren't on gurneys in the streets. And so the idea that this is like the bubonic plague or anything like that, uh, I've had debates with people, and they're saying, "Yeah, but what if it was, Ebola virus that was airborne?" I'm like, well, Ebola virus is 85% lethal, and this is not that. So let's talk about COVID and not a hypothetical pandemic, right? Because we could just say, what if the common cold was 85% lethal? Would we lock down the entire economy because of the common cold? So I'm ethically of the opinion now that this is something where the risk factors that you're imposing on other people through spread, and that's not to deny that there isn't spread and that there aren't risk factors. People still get this quite regularly. Some of those people do suffer some level of disease, and some of those people may become hospitalized. That is something, though, that has always been true. If not for COVID, for every other communicable disease that are out there. And there are people who die of the flu. There are people who die of the cold. There's people who die of STDs, right? I'm gay. I engage in sexual activity, there's a chance that I could spread an STD, including some that are incurable and that are terrible. So are we to say that for that reason all of us have no autonomy whatsoever and we're completely bound to society generally? And oh, by the way, the government is the institution that represents and invokes this quote society and then can there do anything in its name, right? There's lots of problems with that. I don't want to cover them all in this video, although I think that they are worth covering. So my personal view is that it's actually better now for people to go out and to live, to contribute to the economy, and to contribute to themselves for their own good and for the well-being of others. And if there ever comes to be a point where it looks like the medical system is going to be overwhelmed, then my views on that will change accordingly, depending on the evidence that we have when it happens. But that's not what's going on now. So we have a situation now where Porcfest may become potentially a huge act of civil disobedience, even more than normal. Now, in New Hampshire, the rules were never as strict as in many other states. Um, there was never a shelter in place. Lots of things remained open. It hasn't been as bad, but this is still an event that is questionable in terms of the governor's orders. Now, this may be different by the time Porcfest actually happens, which I will let you know the dates right here. I'm trying to link the website here. But see, it's June 22nd to the 28th. If you want to look it up, Porcupine Freedom Festival. I'm trying to put a link in the description of the video, and my thing is not updating, so there we go. There it is. Awesome. One second. Let me put this on here. In terms of the governor's. One second. I was trying to do this earlier, and it wasn't ready yet. So I'll put a link to the Porcfest website in the description, so you can go check that out. So this has, yeah, here we go. This is really kind of, I don't want to say that it changed the character of Porcfest. Porcfest has always had a civil disobedient character, a defiant character always. And this, if it remains to be illegal, if it's in defiance of the governor's orders, certainly not the president's. So President Trump, to his credit, I guess, hasn't been directing the martial law of the United States. And I'm pretty sure many of his counterparts would have done so. But the governors still are, and the governors are still not off the hook just because the Constitution gives them more powers. So the civil disobedient dimension of Porcfest is enhanced because of this, and it's that much more important, I think. So let's see, Porcfest. Again, Porcupine Freedom Festival, not like Fuckfest. I'll tell you what, hypnotizing people is exhausting. Holy cow. There's probably a way to do this before I start the video, but whatever. Save. Alright. So it should be popping up there whenever y'all get a chance to look at it. COVID-19 sucks, but I'm glad to have already had it. Yeah, there's a good chance I already had it, but I'm not 100% positive. I was never that sick. I had a very, very mild cough and a fever for one night, but who knows? Anyway, so there's that aspect of it, Porcfest has always had a civil disobedient element. It's going to very likely have been enhanced a great deal. They debated not having it for some time. And then the other thing that's changed, which is good, is that Pentazoid, I'm not going to answer that question right now. I'll get back to it though. If Porcfest has always been a very unique event. All right, we have speakers. You have economic lectures from people like David Friedman is a regular attendee. Mike Murphy, Michael Humer in the past. A lot of people have come. Of course, a lot of people are booked and then don't come. So I was disappointed. Maj Torre and Scott Horton didn't show up last year for unfortunate reasons. But it's always been a great place. Stefan Molyneux in the past is gone. I met Stefan there back in 2012, which led to my first video about him actually, 2012 or 2013. And um, so you have that. You'll have lectures on everything from economics to law to polycentric legal orders. But then you have more cultural stuff, polyamory, homeschooling, beekeeping, how to build your own AR-15, the whole gamut. And the event is just such a strange mix, eclectic mix of you've got like families there with children who are playing and doing games and coloring and finger painting and doing role playing, but then you also have people walking around with guns and people doing drugs and people selling edibles. You have dance parties. You have, I mean, some of the dance parties you basically have gay guys wearing leather, and others you have church services. You just have everything. It's a huge mix, and it's quite a smorgasbord. At one point, and I've replayed this story before, I was walking down Agora Alley, the agorist venue where most people sell their goods, and I saw a gay anarcho-capitalist Arab with an AK-47 talking to David Friedman, an atheist anarcho-capitalist Jew. And it's like only at Porcfest will you see that kind of admixture. There's redneck Muslims who go, libertarian redneck Muslims who are white who go. There's a whole thing. So however, there's been a criticism here, and I'll probably go and chalk to Derek Friedman because Derek Friedman's a good guy to talk about this. But Porcfest has been great, but the character of Porcfest has changed over the years, and those changes haven't all been bad, but also I think many people would say that they haven't all been good either. Originally, it was just Free Staters camping, and then more and more of them kept coming, and it slowly became a bigger and bigger event, which has been great, but it's also become an ever more organized event. So the speakers became more formalized, where they wanted the venues to go became more organized. The fees you paid became higher and higher. The admission, it became something you needed to get admission to, and those fees have gone up. By the way, because of what's happening, the price of admission has gone way down. I think it was $60 or $100. It's $25 right now. You want to go for a whole week, it's $25. So we'll talk about the logistics later, but I put a link to the event in the description. If you want to go, it's going to be much cheaper this year. Of course, the travel costs are going to be bigger than the ticket admissions, but I'm just saying it's a lot cheaper. But the other thing that's happened is because many people who were planning to come are not going to come, and because it's been unclear what was going to be legal and what was not going to be legal, basically there's no formal plans. It's not going to be managed at this point to a very large extent. It has become significantly more decentralized than it was uh, for the last several years. And that is going to be very interesting and I think very fun. I'm looking forward to that. Now, I didn't necessarily hate the organization that was there. It wasn't all bad. There were some things that seemed a little nanny status. When you bought your ticket, you were supposed to wear a little bracelet to show that you bought a ticket, and I never did. I was like, fuck that. But sometimes you would go to an event and they would ask you to see it. So the only speaker that I know is going to be there is Tom Woods, and Tom Woods has gone out of his way to say that he's going to go. He seems very much in the spirit of the event. He honestly should have come to Porcfest years ago. All his buddies, Murphy and Tucker and everybody else have been going there for over a decade. But so he's going to go. That's the only speaker that I have. There'll be many, many people there. And to be honest, the best discussions don't happen with the speakers typically. They happen with the conversations you have with people you meet. All right, those collective. You get people international. You get Israelis, Norwegians, Germans, Australians, people from all over the United States, Canadians, South Americans, Brazilians, Republicans, libertarians, anarchists, capitalists, left libertarians. There's always a bunch of left libertarians there. So if you want to go and have a debate or some kind of a different perspective, that's always available. So it's going to be much more decentralized this year. It's going to be much cheaper this year. It's going to be much more in the spirit of disobedience, very likely anyway. There's a chance that by the time it happens, New Hampshire will be pretty open in de facto, if not de jure. So I think that it's a really good time to come. Unless you're worried about COVID and you don't want to catch it and you think that that's an ethical line you're not willing to cross at that point, sure, of course, you're not obligated to go. I've always tell people you're not obligated to come. But I loved it. I moved to New Hampshire. I think I went to 2 Porcfests and then I moved. And I've never regretted that for a minute. If you're interested in Bitcoin, if you're interested in gold and silver, if you're interested in guns, if you're interested in the Free State Project, Porcfest is the place to go. It's a beautiful setting. You can look at the pictures. The pictures don't do it any justice. It's basically in the northern third of New Hampshire. You can see the presidential range, so Mount Washington, Jefferson, Adams, uh, Pierce, Eisenhower off in the distance. Probably the most epic visages in the United States east of the Rockies. I mean, I can comfortably say that they probably are. Um, and if not, very close to that. And yeah, so I highly recommend people go if you can and if you're interested. It's a month away. Let me look at the dates here. Let's see. I've already said them once, but I'll say them again now that more people are watching. So it's June 22nd to the 28th. The main events, I don't know that there are going to be main events this year, so this is a big qualifier, but usually Friday, Saturday are the busiest days. During the weeks are a little bit less busy. But if you're closed, if what you're doing is closed right now, if your work is closed, your school or whatever it is, and you've got the ability to get to New Hampshire, and also if that's difficult for you for whatever reason, there are forums. I would recommend going to the Free State Forum or maybe I don't know if there's a Free State Reddit or whatever, but there's a lot of people who coordinate. I've given people rides to Porcfest. There's people who offer them. Uh, you don't need bus service when you've got organization of dedicated capitalists who will have their underage children serve you for a price. So, um, I mean, there was I think it was the year before I went. Um, there's usually a decent amount of media that goes to these just because it is such a freak show in so many ways. But NPR interviewed, there was an open bar that was being run by a 9-year-old. The 9-year-old was selling hard liquor to people for cryptocurrency, gold, silver, and FRNs. And they got that still happens. It's not as widely known. The last time I went, there was a gay dance party that involved a lot of drugs, and there was a 9-year-old who was a bouncer working there. And I don't know what he paid him to do that, but something. Um, so uh, my guess is there'll be media at this time as well, just because it's going to be an affront to the orders or whatever. So um, yeah. Now let's see. Now the $25 gets you admission to Porcfest. Now you have to kind of figure out where you're going to stay yourself. Rogers Campground is the place where the event is held. I would recommend. Typically, they sell out way before the event happens. It would normally be much too late now to get a spot at the campground. However, because of COVID, that may not be the case. So find a link to Rogers Campground. I think you'll find it on the Porcfest website, and there may not. I mean, you can do camping trailers. They have some cabins. I'm assuming those have all been filled, but don't take my word for it. And then they have a large area for tents. So if you can do a tent, that works fine as well. I've done that when I've done Porcfest, sleeping in my truck. At least 1 year, maybe 2 years, I slept in the back of my truck, and then I started tenting. And I tented with a subscriber. 1 year, a subscriber and I carpooled from Michigan all the way to New Hampshire. We were switching drivers, and we slept in a tent. I met another subscriber a couple years ago who I took up from Boston. So if he's watching, Weston, shout out to Weston. And gang signal, white power symbol. He sleeps in a hammock. Usually he'll find a place. Some of the years I would go and I did not have time to get a spot, and I would just go and find somebody who would be. Now they're going to hate me for saying this, so blah blah blah. Talk to the hand, but like, if you can't find a spot, you can find a spot, if you know what I mean. Somebody will give it to you for free or make you pay. If you want to be real nice about it, go to Rogers Campground and say, here, how much does it cost to make this go away? I personally prefer to stay in hotels. I've been staying at hotels the last time. There's several hotels in Lancaster, which is nearby. The closest one is called the Cabot Inn. It's less than half a mile away, so you could stay there and walk. That's where I've stayed the last couple of years. There's several more in town. They tend to fill up, especially for Friday and Saturday, not so much earlier in the week. But you can find people who have rooms, and I have secured a room at the Cabot. Right now, they're saying that you can't stay there unless you're an essential worker, but you can be an essential worker if you need to be an essential worker. So I'm an essential worker for Porcfest. Congratulations to me. So I've got a room at the Cabot. They may still have rooms available. They're, normal hotel rooms like 70, 60, 70 bucks a night. Some of the hotels in Lancaster, they're still only a mile or so away, and they're probably even cheaper. So those are basically your options there, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and now is a good time to go. So, all right. Let's see if you have any questions about Porcfest, how to go, what to expect, what to do, how to get there, what it's like, what it's all about. Please let me know. I'll get to those questions, but I'll just see what everyone else is saying. So, if you see someone carjacking your car and taking it for a joyride opposite your direction, do you have the right to shoot them in the back of the head if they are not endangering you? I would say yes. I would say yes. You have the right to reclaim your property and stop the theft, and if that's how you do it, then that's how you do it. And there could be an argument that that's excessive, but you could say there was no other real way. And you could also make the argument that by stealing your car, that they were being aggressive and endangering people and whatnot. So I would say yes. I don't know if I would personally do it, but I think that would be justified. Yeah. Um, Scott Horton and Irving Kristol were supposed to debate. I was going to go to the Soho Forum to that. Yes, they were, and I have tickets to that, and it's been postponed, but not. We don't know for how long yet. I would love to have seen that. I was going to go with Ivan the Heathen. We both got tickets. He's the one who alerted it to me. I was actually in Montana at the time, this last summer, and yes, that would be all about. That would be the most epic thing. I think they sold out faster than they ever had before, and I really hope that still happens. I can't. First, it's not Irving Kristol. Irving Kristol's the dad. It's uh, like what's his name? Not Irving Kristol. Um, fuck, I can't remember his name. Irving Kristol is his dad, though, isn't it? Anyway, I can't believe he agreed to do it, but he did. So, in libertarian thought, is it okay to use state power to ban circumcision? What about using federal funds for stem cell-based foreskin regeneration? So, in libertarian thought, like a minarchist libertarian thought, I would say definitely it could ban circumcision because circumcision is a rights violation. I think that's very clearly a rights violation. I've made many videos to that effect. I believe that very firmly. I think the arguments for that are incredibly strong. They're as strong as they are for any other rights violation, pretty much. So, yes, they definitely could ban circumcision. And I favor an anarchist solution where we have polycentric legal order, and I would see circumcision as a tort. So it wouldn't be done because it would be something you could be sued for in the future, not just the doctor, but the hospital, the insurance company, the parents, everything. And that would be a very strong disincentive to doing it. It wouldn't mean that nobody would, it would just mean it would be far less common than it currently is. And the people who are the victims of it would be open to restitution. So there's that. Now, in terms of your second part of that question, in terms of stem cell research, no. Okay, so it may be, I agree that it's a rights violation, but it's a rights violation committed by not the federal government so much, although there's an argument there because of the subsidies through Medicaid and Medicare, in general, they shouldn't be funding research. And in general, they shouldn't, the federal government, the taxpayer shouldn't pay restitution if you're a victim of a crime, right? If you've been, let's say it wasn't circumcision, but you were mutilated in some other way by a criminal or by a doctor, then the doctor should pay you restitution, not the federal government. Now, there is an argument there, a more nuanced one I could see, where you say, well, look, the federal government paid for all of these. You could even say that they allowed them because they made it legal. And that one's a little bit sketchier, but if you say, hey, they paid, like, hey, I had Medicaid or I got circumcised with Medicaid money, then shouldn't they pay? Well, they being the taxpayer, I don't know. I think it should be the doctors who did it and whatnot, but that would be the only real way. I know that you want stem cell based foreskin regeneration, but that doesn't, just because there's lots of things I want too, and I wouldn't just say even valid things. Cancer is a valid thing. Millions of people die of cancer, hundreds of thousands or whatever, and it doesn't make it right to force taxpayers to fund research in that. And the fact that I was circumcised against my will and it hurt, it sucks, and I hate it, and it bothers me every day. That is not a rights claim. That's not a tort claim against people who aren't responsible for that, right? So people who didn't circumcise me, who didn't ask for me to be circumcised, who didn't help, I can't force them to pay for research, even if it's not my fault that it happened. That's just, I don't believe in positive obligations like that. However, if you're going to say, well, the federal government paid for it, then maybe they could help pay for the other. But I don't like it because you're forcing people who, you're trying to right a wrong by another wrong by taxing people who aren't responsible. Yeah, they had mushrooms last year. Yes, they did. There were a lot of people microdosing last year. You kind of had to hunt for them, though. Is it anarchist in its essential nature? Uh, that is an interesting question. I don't know if Porcfest has an essential nature, so I'm not sure I agree with the premise of that question. But I would say it's very anarchistic. It has many anarchist characteristics. Is that its essential nature? People would debate that. Um, Church services are on Sunday. Yeah, there's church services, and then there's naked yoga as well on church. Yeah. Would it be weird to go to Porcfest alone? None of my friends are libertarians. No, lots of people go alone. I've gone alone multiple times. You'll make friends. You'll network. The other thing is bring a friend. Bring someone who's not a libertarian. The one year, I've told this story a couple times, but there was a kid running around. He was 14. He had an AR-15 on his shoulder, and I was talking to him, and I was like, "Are your parents free staters?" Like, yeah, they are. And he was there with this other 14-year-old, and I was like, "Are you guys cousins or brothers?" And they're like, "No, he's my friend." And I was like, "Oh, are your parents free staters?" And he's like, "No." He goes, "My parents think that I'm up here camping." So you had a guy who was not from a free stater stock, not from a libertarian family, who's spending a week at Porcfest, and that had to be good for him. So, if you can bring a non-libertarian friend, that would be great. Uh, I met David Friedman there. He was cool. David Friedman's very cool, and you get to interact with him in a way you're never going to get to interact with him. You can go to other conferences and talk to him or whatever, but you're going to see him laid back around the fire. I don't know if Friedman's going this year, but in the past, around the fire, around the dinner table, perusing, the way he's always open to talk. He's very friendly. Um, let's see. I'm from Boston. Hey, Arthur Rain. I'm not far from Boston, so um, it's not far. If you want to come from Boston to Porcfest, it's not very far. Banning circumcision is like banning assault or murder. Yep. Porcfest held on private property. It is. Um, I have to work, otherwise I would go and see you, Dave. Oh, who's Dave? What are we talking about here? Just sleep in a tree. I mean, I had one of my subscribers slept in a hammock in a tree. Um, there's a motel in Lancaster that's absolutely rank. It smells like it hasn't been renovated since the 1970s. Bill Crystal. There we go. Thanks, guys. I felt like an idiot. I knew it wasn't Irving because I knew Irving was the dad. Pentazoid, what motel was that so you can tell people not to go there? I love crappy hotels. Yeah, there's something nice about a hotel that's, a little rough around the edges. Do courts exist in an ANCAP society? Yeah, there'll be arbitration services offered. Many of them will be addendums connected to probably larger organizations like insurance companies, and some of them will be more independent. There will not be standard driver's licenses. Well, would be my guess. My guess is that the owners of roads and the owners of insurance will issue something, say, hey, if we want to cover you in insurance, we want some kind of certification or proof. Or if you don't have that, you must pay much, much higher rates. No, there would not be a standard driver's license for everybody. And indeed, we don't have, look, there's lots of people on the roads now who don't have the same driver's license, right? Every state's a little bit different. And on top of that, you have foreigners who are coming here who are allowed to drive who don't necessarily have the same amount of training. So no, there wouldn't be driver's licenses. There would be, um, roads would demand that you have some kind of proof that you can drive there, and this could be streamlined. You got your easy pass that says, hey, you passed the test or whatever. So, all right, am I in the LP? I am not. Uh, they would have to, because libertarians want almost everything to be a tort. Not almost everything. I mean, well, so everything that's a crime, not like things that aren't crimes. It's the motel downtown. Pendazoid, there's several motels downtown. I think I might have stayed there one year. And who knows? Maybe it's nicer now. Maybe they cleaned up. They've obviously not had many people there the last few months. So what else can I say about Porcfest? I mean, so I don't know if Friedman's going to be there, but Tom Woods is going to be there, so that should be fun. I thought ANCAPs consisted of high-functioning sociopaths or losers who don't want rules. Well, I don't know what you base that on, so I don't have to. I mean, you can think whatever you want. That may be true for some people, but there's high-functioning sociopaths who are Democrats and Republicans as well, who don't want rules for themselves, right? Do you think Joe Biden follows rules? And then I saw Ivan the Heathen's videos and began watching Hunter Hoppa. Yeah, the ANCAPs are not against rules. They're just the institutions of rulemaking and how they function is important. This is like the great um, non sequitur that a lot of people have, is that if you don't want the state, then you don't want the functions of the state that it does to be implemented, and that's just not always the case. Uh, really, I thought there were like 3 hotels. I think there's 3 or 4. Yeah, anarchists are against rulers, not against rules. That's kind of one of the quick cliches. Boo, boo, boo. Not that he's the most famous, but I know Derek J is going to go. He's still going to have his hexagon. They're working on getting a. They're going to have a dance club, so there'll be a dance club. There's been friction because a lot of the longtime members do not like the increased structure and the increased rulemaking, and they were charging higher fees. They were saying if you wanted to be a vendor, that you needed to pay like $500, and if you wanted to be a vendor, you had to be on one particular area of the campground instead of wherever you wanted. And a lot of people resented that, and um, so many people resented it that there started to become a second Porcfest anyway called Forkfest. Like from the cryptocurrencies where you fork a currency. Porcfest was already forking, and I think Forkfest has been going on for like 3 or 4 years, and it's much smaller. It's my understanding it's more like 40 or 50 people. I haven't gone yet. I may go just to check it out this way, um, just to see what it's like. Oh my goodness, naughty, naughty. Uh, bu- 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 Rick Rule and Doug Casey made a video on why there's a lot of broke losers in libertarianism. Well, there's a certain, it certainly has an allure for a lot of people. Uh, it brings a lot of marginal people together. I'm part of the Porcfest planning group. Hey, Bitcoin motorist, what's the plan this year? Let us in. Ian is not banned. He was there last year. I did not see Ian there last year. Or did I? Yeah, but did Free okay, maybe Ian was there, but was Free Talk Live there? Because for many, many years, Free Talk Live was kind of like the heart of what was going on there. Free Talk Live was broadcasting. They had a studio there, and that was a big kind of part of it. And that was Free Talk Live wasn't broadcasting there last year. It wasn't didn't Free Talk Live broadcast during Porcfest, but not. Um, yeah. Thoughts on Emma Goldman? I don't know a ton about her. I mean, I know who she is. I know she went to prison. She famously said that if voting could change anything, it would be illegal. So she kind of falls into this gray area where she seems kind of left wing and kind of right wing anarchist, but you know, doesn't fit neatly into either one. So she sounds pretty insightful. A lot of people kind of compare her to like a left wing Ayn Rand. I don't have a ton of thoughts about her, though. I don't know enough about her. Um, what are your thoughts on James Weeks, the guy who took his clothes off at LNC in 2016? I don't know James Weeks, so I only know him about from that one thing, and I don't know everything about it. I do think that's a little weird, and I'm all about like nudity in the right context and platonic uh, public nudity, but like that's not the context. You don't do that in front of everybody else without a really, really compelling reason, and I don't think he had a really compelling reason. If you're doing a protest or something, but it sounds like he was just trying to make a point, and it seemed a little bit pedantic to make that point in that way. It was a hugely damaging thing to do. It seems like, but again, I'm not in his head, so I don't know everything that he was thinking. Um, Free Talk Live was not there, but Ian and Mark were. So, is there any chance that Free Talk Live will be there this year? Have you heard of the Midwest Liberty Fest? I have not. Nothing official this year, but it's possible Free Talk Live may be allowed this year. I had a little bit of a spat with not to air stupid petty drama, and this is really petty drama, very very petty drama. So this does not matter that much, but on a Porcfest or a Free Stater page that asked about lodgings there, I just said that I've always paid Porcfest and I've always paid for my parking pass at Rogers, but I did sleep in my truck 1 year, maybe two, and the guys who organized the couple that organized Porcfest that year came down on me very hard and said, "You're a thief. You're not a libertarian. You're a piece of shit. You're a liar. Blah blah blah." And it was very very holier than thou bullshit, and I was not happy about that. And I let him know. In fact, I said some stuff that was probably a little unkind, to be honest, taking it a little too far. James Weeks probably supports communal showering. Now, let me ask you something, D. Garrett. Is James Weeks circumcised or not? Because that would really affect my opinion of him. Uh, you heard of Brett Venat? I certainly have heard of Brett Venat, School Sucks podcast. I have not. Okay, I have a hard time being a regular listener of a podcast, and so I am not a regular listener of School Sucks. And he's got a ton of material, but I have listened to several hours of his stuff. So, and he said some really wonderful things. There's some aspects of what he said I have directly incorporated. So I once heard him say that a service is not, you can't just do something for somebody and then say that's a service for you and then take their money on the pretext that you gave them a service, which is what taxes are usually. Taxes are extortion on the pretext of exchange. we're taking this because we ostensibly gave you something. But what he points out is that the only way for something to be a service is if both parties agree. So if you wake up one morning and your driveway has been shoveled of snow, and the guy's like, well, I shoveled your driveway, you owe me $30, you could say, I did not ask you to shovel my driveway. I either didn't want it shoveled, or I wanted to do it myself, or I wanted to be able to, right? You don't owe them. They didn't do you a service. You get to decide whether it was a service or not, and you have to agree ahead of time. And so this also comes into the whole thank you for your service to everybody who works for the government. And it's like, I didn't ask you to invade Iraq. I didn't want you to invade Iraq. That's not something I'm willing to pay for. I'm being forced to. And yeah, so that's an insight. I don't know if he came up with that, but that's where I heard it, and I'm a fan. But I don't follow any podcast regularly, let alone one that's got that much history to it. Mm. What do you think about Joe Biden's "You ain't black" comments? I think it's a transparent part of Democratic strategy to just tell blacks they have to vote for Democrats, and if they don't, then they're not good black people. And it's really condescending. I don't know how much is going to change people's minds, but it's very clear what's going on there. What do you think about the Libertarian Party ticket? I don't know enough about the people running to have a huge opinion. I've obviously, I mean, I know Horton and Dave Smith have really been pimping out Hornberger, and I've known about Hornberger for a long time, at least since 2003. And everything I know about him is he's an upstanding guy, and he's an articulate spokesman for liberty. So I have no problem with him as far as that goes. But I don't know enough about the other people to say, well, I think it should be him and not the other people. I'm also very curious what the deal was Justin Amash. He goes to this whole big shebang and then backs away for no apparent reason. Um, I don't think Biden's black comment were that weird. The DNC is basically like the Uncle Sam's Plantation. That's actually a book, Uncle Sam's Plantation. Nick Fuentes used to be an ANCAP. He said he left it because ANCAP doesn't work in a multicultural society. Rothbard also was critical of multiculturalism thoughts. I think that that's kind of dumb because Nick Fuentes just says multiculturalism doesn't work, period. So he would say multiculturalism doesn't really work in a state. Like, is his argument that multiculturalism is just makes anarcho-capitalism impossible, but it's possible in a state? Or is the argument that it's impossible in either and only the state can prevent multiculturalism? Right. So I would need to know more about his position to really critique it beyond that. But I think that's kind of this weird idea the race realist nationalists, whatever their ilk, whether they're racist or not, and they're not all racist, but there's this idea that like if that race and ethnicity are really, really important, okay, let's concede that just for the sake of argument. And then a very large logical leap to the state can somehow manage that in a way that's efficacious and more efficacious than having freedom, than having an anarcho-capitalist society per se. And I just don't buy that. The problem, I think that when you have a state and people have to fight for political power, it exacerbates problems more than it solves them. So uh, I would have to know more about his position on that. There's this weird former ANCAP saying, and most of them don't do this, most people don't become former ANCAPs, but oh, I suddenly got woke and I'm more pragmatic than I was before. And by the way, let me explain how the government's going to manage things in some perfect way or some optimal way, whether it's race relations or trade or whatever it is. And there's not really good explanations for any of that. Um, uh, the VP pick Spike Cohen is an ANCAP. VP for who? Justin Amash was probably threatened like Ross Perot, but I doubt that because this Libertarian Party hasn't been dividing up, and he's not as famous as Ross Perot. He's not a billionaire. Um, I joined the LP and became a delegate just to vote for Jacob Hornberger. No, fair enough. Joe Jorgensen is less radical than Hornberger, but more ideological pure than Gary Johnson. Well, that's a very low bar to be. Look, and I'm not an enemy of Gary Johnson, but he was not ideologically pure. I wouldn't want to be in a world where Nick Fuentes is an O. Is an O in power? O. Yeah. I mean, I love it when they go and do the America First stuff with the Zionists. I love that. That's wonderful. That's a great service to the world. We need more of that. I love watching them make Charlie Kirk squirm. It's hilarious. Like those the sniveling Zionism of the Pragers and the Ben Shapiros. And again, I actually respect Ben Shapiro a whole lot, but like they are just so far gone on that issue. And so I'll give Fuentes, props for spearheading that to the extent that he did. I think the latter thing you said was accurate of Fuentes. Multiculturalism is bad for libertarianism and statism, and only the state can prevent it. Uh, the state that can prevent multiculturalism is a state that can do is a state that can do a lot worse than that. So I would ask what would be their historical precedent here would be what North Korea. I mean North Korea is an ethno state. Um, the United States has never been an ethno state. I mean, yes, there was white supremacy in the United States. There was also millions of black people and millions of Native Americans and whatever. So, the Roman Empire, and we also know historically states that try and be ethno states aren't that successful. The Roman Empire wasn't an ethno state. The Chinese empires haven't been ethno states really. I mean, they've been primarily Han, but not exclusively. I mean, the height of imperial China was an ethnic minority ruling an ethnic majority. So, um, that's if that's his belief, I would question what's the base on what's the basis for the assumption that a it's a huge problem, and I also wonder how they define multiculturalism. So is it mean there can only be one culture and there can be no variations whatsoever, and if there are at all within whatever arbitrary area, then that society is doomed, right? So let's just say all non-whites were eliminated from the United States. Well, we'd still have Southern whites who eat barbecue and are Baptists or whatever, and then we'd have Puritans, and so those are different cultures. So do those have to be obliterated as well, or is it just as long as they're white? I don't know. There doesn't seem to be an honest answer to that, a non-arbitrary answer to that. And let's say, what do you do once you establish, they come up with a list and they say, well, these are the cultures that are okay and these are the ones that are not okay. And even if they're not making a value judgment and saying, well, these cultures are bad, they're just saying they're different and they can't mix. Okay, meaning what exactly? That if you're from culture X and you're from culture Y, that there can be no, like, there has to be a wall and you can never talk to each other, and because if you can talk to each other, they can influence each other culturally. You can't have trade, you can't have tourism, or what? Or does it just mean the public schools will only teach the one and not the other? Like it's something that just sounds like I'm imagining a perfect solution that I can't articulate. I don't watch him, but I'm just when I try and articulate what that would be, how that would look, how you would even attempt to do that, it just becomes gobbledygook nonsense that's based on completely arbitrary, unsubstantiated things, right? So I don't want to besmirch him more because I don't know enough about how he would rectify all that. But it just seems to me that doesn't sound pragmatic at all. That sounds like that utopian thinking. Uh, but oh, look at it! It's just like it's heating up now. Um, Bordertarians. Wait. Bitcoin motorist. We talked on a picnic table with Pentazoid, didn't we? Or somebody. I met you. Spike Cohen was originally Vermin Supreme's running mate, but Vermin Supreme lost, and the delegates selected Spike to be Jorgensen's VP now, even though Jorgensen endorsed. Okay, I don't. Cinefan, I don't know. I don't know any of that. No comment. I don't know what's going on. Did you have a single issue that turned you on to anarcho-capitalism? Was it the dogmatism of the professor you talk about sometimes? For me, it was trade. I don't know which. I'm not sure what professor you're talking about. No, there was a very long, very gradual process of looking at issue by issue by issue. What role should the state have? First, recognizing that it's possible for the state maybe to do good, but also to do bad. That the state imposes costs, not just in terms of taxes and opportunity costs, but because you have this institution with these certain powers, with these abilities, those powers are substantial and could be threatening. They could also be hypothetically useful, but you have to bear that in mind. And so, like for me, the first issue was guns because Columbine had happened and gun control was in the news in the late '90s a lot. It was hotly debated politically, especially in the 2000 election between Bush and Gore, and that was the first issue that I really looked at. And I decided that the government's role in regulating firearms was basically zero. In fact, there were strong arguments and strong reasons to have it be totally, laissez-faire when it came to that. And then it was a slow process of issue by issue by issue. And by early college, the first year or two of college, I was down to, courts, military, police, that kind of thing. Not roads, not education, not welfare, not environments, not any of that stuff. And it was the last one to go was defense. That was the one that I thought that I don't really see how that could work another way. And what got me over that was a series of things. John Mongopoulos, who had a local TV show in Lansing, was interviewing Joe Sobran. Joe Sobran was an anarcho-capitalist at the time, and I read that somewhere, and he said, well, Sobran became an anarcho-capitalist from reading a book, Democracy, the God That Failed, by a guy named Hans Hermann Hoppe. So that's the first time I heard the name Hans Hermann Hoppe and Democracy, the God That Failed. So I looked up Sobran, and I found an interview with Sobran by a guy named Scott Horton. This interview would have been done in maybe 2003. And then looking through Scott Horton's files, which at the time he didn't call himself Scott Horton, he's called himself Philip Drew Administrator, which is the name of a fictional character in a novel by Colonel Mandel House, who is Woodrow Wilson's right-hand man, alter ego, power behind the throne, whatever you want to call it. He wrote about a fascist dictatorship in the United States run by a guy named Philip Drew Administrator, and Scott Horton used that as his nom de plume before he had the Scott Horton show. And so anyway, he interviewed Sobran, and I listened to that interview. And then I also noticed that he had interviewed Hans Hermann Hoppe, and the title, I think he interviewed Hoppe twice, and one of the two interviews was called The Myth of National Defense, which is a book that Hoppe had written. And so I listened to that, and that audio interview of Scott Horton and Hans Hermann Hoppe, The Myth of Rational Defense, is what made me think, okay, that really sounds reasonable to me. Yeah, up to that point, the logic made sense, but I was like, yeah, that sounds so radical. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. And then listening to that, and one of the main points there is that most of what the defense is incarceration, is controlling the populace for the benefit of the government. They have bunkers that are there to protect the government from us and from the Russians as well, sure, but from us and them. If it's for them, not for us. So that was how that came. A lot of people who support Fuentes were former ANCAPs. Okay, that may be true, but that doesn't really prove anything. Um, a lot of ANCAPs were former Republicans. Does that mean the Republican? Does that by itself prove anything? No. Um, I've been toying with the idea of investing more in Bitcoin. How many Bitcoin talks or whatever take place at Porcfest? Could I speak to a Bitcoin expert at Porcfest? Well, there's nothing planned this year, but yes, there's usually a lot of people who are heavily involved in Porcfest, and you would be able to talk to a lot of people who have been using um, Bitcoin for at this point up to 10 years. So are there going to be lectures on it? I don't know if there's going to be formal lectures at all, but there's going to be a lot of people who are Bitcoin wise that you can talk to. Um, do you think Bezos would be a trillionaire today? No, I don't actually. I think that the regulatory capture that we have at so many different levels, at some point you get concentrations of wealth. So I don't think that's the case, but it is hard to know for sure. The other thing that's almost certainly false is that we wouldn't have trillionaires because there wouldn't be as much inflation. So just, I don't know, that's a pedantic. There would still be great wealth, but they would be measured in ounces of gold, which would be whatever it'd be more than 1,600 times less because whatever the gold price is deflated because it's not being used as a currency. But no, he wouldn't be a trillionaire. He would be a multimillionaire or maybe a billionaire. Uh, we talked. Yep. Okay, I know who you are. I remember. We were on the picnic table. I remember you thought I threw you under the bus, but here we are, still talking. Not to bring up old wounds. Uh, no, we're having the foreskin restoration meetup on my channel, which makes sense. Most Hispanics vote for Bernie and support socialist policies. Do you think ANCAP? Well, look, I heard Brian Kaplan talk about this recently, and he said that the metrics the metrics are that immigrants are very, very close on average to non-immigrants, and that also it's not consistent. If you go back to the Reagan era, immigrants tended to be more likely to be Republican. So the idea that certain groups just are automatically and forever going to be a certain way is wrong. And it is wrong. Like Caucasian white Americans, WASP Americans have not had the same ideology for 200 years or for 20 years for that matter. So this idea that like there's a deterministic thing that, well, if you have this DNA or you come from this place, then you have to have these politics is just wrong. Now, that's not to discount that genetics matter, they do, but like it's too complicated how they manifest cultural trends, all this stuff. And so Kaplan would point out that in terms of like metrics of actual empirical data, they don't vary that much. So a lot of Jewish people are communists, but a lot of Jewish people are libertarians too. A lot of white people are communists. A lot of white people are stupid socialists. I live by Vermont. There's a lot of stupid socialists who are white in Vermont. There's a lot of black people who are pretty capitalistic, who don't give a fuck about socialism or Bernie Sanders, right? There's a lot of black people who don't like Bernie Sanders, as Bernie Sanders very well knows. So I see the temptation to say that. I really do. And I will admit that I've felt similar things, but I don't think that it really bears out. I believe the sole purpose of government should be to regulate communal showering. Or as Walter Block said, he used to be an anarchist, but now he supports the government that only forces people to read economics in one lesson. I'm all for it. If we're going to have a government, there's got to be communal showering of everybody who's attractive. Nationalism seems to be the future of the right wing. We can't predict the future, blah, blah, blah. Who knows? Nationalism was definitely in the past. Shit, what is this? Um, Bitcoin was my gateway drug to ANCAPism. Yeah, I think that was true for some people. I definitely think so. What happened to the Free State Project? Well, it's still going on. Still making the Free State freer. How do you feel about Barry Goldwater? I feel like he had a great speechwriter named Carl Hess who gave him all his best ideas. Goldwater, I mean, as far as Republicans go, was pretty good. He was pretty wrong about some things, like Vietnam, for instance. He was pretty right about other things, like the Civil Rights Act. So As far as Republicans go, he's fine. He's As far as libertarians go, he's piss poor, and his best stuff. Um, Extremism in the moderation in the pursuit of liberty, or moderation in the pursuit of justice, is no virtue, and something blah blah blah. That came from Karl Hess, who was an anarcho-capitalist. Will Larkin Rose be at Porcfest? I have no idea. I have to ask Larkin Rose. I have no idea. You'll never know who you're going to meet. You'll see somebody that you know. Me, at the very least. I preferred graded vintage Pokemon cards to speculative asset compare. Yeah. We asked Larkin to come last year. We may ask again. He usually doesn't go to Porcfest. I think he needs money. I think you need to pay him, or else he's not going to do it, which is fine, right? He doesn't owe us his time. Isn't there some sort of 15-day travel restrict? Oh, come on. Come on. I'm from Mass. I don't know if I'll be able to get to New Hampshire. Arthur, don't be a masshole. Don't be a masshole. Just cross the border. The highway's open. I've crossed every New England border every week for like a month. Okay? It's fine. Just cross the border. What kind of libertarian answer is that? Cross the border. Like the whole point of not having the Articles of Confederation, right, was that you don't have to do that. So don't do that. Water under the bridge. I agree, Bitcoin motorists. I hope that no hard feelings. I'm sorry if it felt that way at the time. Nothing was meant. Hopefully, we can have some good foreskin activism, some anti-circumcision stuff. I will bring my flyers. I have a whole bunch of flyers from Intaction. I'll bring my shirts. I'll do it, man. I definitely want to. This is a huge event for that. This is a great opportunity for intactivism, and I look forward to doing that. Immigrants vote 9-1 Democrat. Yeah, but that hasn't always been the case. Has not always been the case. As I pointed out, not always been the case. And also, Democrat. What does that even mean to be Democrat? Democrats were against open borders. Now they're for them, right? They're all over the place. So you're pretending like, well, that's what it is now, and I'm an idiot because I don't anticipate that lasting forever. I'm not delusional. It's really quite insulting, to be honest. A lot of Jews like Bitcoin. Also, just voting Democrat doesn't say anything about their ideology, right? As Kaplan points out, they perceive that the Democrats are pro-immigrant, so they vote for Democrat. That doesn't mean that they're socialist. That doesn't mean that they favor gun control. That doesn't mean any of that stuff. Okay, it's the same with blacks voting for Democrats. So, like, the problem with the parties is there's so much in politics that go into that has nothing to do with the ideology of what people have. There's a lot of socially conservative Christian blacks who vote Democrats, but they're still socially conservative Christians, right? They're Baptists or whatever. They're non-college educated, but they still vote. And 9-1, Gregory. That you're telling me that's not bullshit. Like you didn't just make that up just now. I'll admit that it's a majority, but so what? Ignore the fact that immigrants vote Democrats is exactly what the Trotskyite infiltrator and our college Republicans said. Well, we all know Trotskyite infiltrators exist because we have Bill Kristol and Irving Kristol. So I'm not denying that's not a real thing, and I'm not denying that there are people who favor open borders for necessarily bad reasons. However, that doesn't mean there are good reasons. Brian Kaplan is not a Trotskyite infiltrator. Whatever you want to say about Brian Kaplan, he's encouraging people to have more kids. He's white, and he had a whole bunch of white babies, including twins. So he's not a Trotskyite infiltrator. Beam. Hi, Beam. People change. No one is born a socialist. Yeah. By the way, Tom Woods is confirmed. Yeah, I tried to look. Not to throw shade. She's better now that she's not a lush like she used to be. I am not the biggest Carla Gorecki fan. When she talks, I hate the way she talks. I hate the way she speaks. It gives me headaches. So if you listen to Carla Gorecki and it bothers you, just be aware. I was thinking about this today, and I look. She she stopped drinking apparently. Good for her. I'm happy for her. She lost a lot of weight. Good. I'm happy for her. Um, and her heart's in the right spot. Whatever. But you know how when you were in high school at the public school that you should never have had to go to, and you know how there were people in your class who might have been the most charismatic, the best leaders, the best speakers, the people that you really looked up to the most. And then there was somebody else who was the student body president who just, they weren't that person, but they weren't the most charismatic person. They just had some other motivation to do that, and no one else really wanted it because the position didn't really. No offense. I really feel that way. Maybe I'm wrong. I always feel that way about Carla Gorecki, and I'm only saying this because it embarrasses me when I see her talk. Like when Dave Smith was there last year, and she's stealing the mic, and oh my god, so cringe. And it's just that's not fair, I guess, because I can't really point and say, oh, this is wrong. There's something about her personality I just find unbelievably irritating, and the way that she talks. I don't know what it is, and I'm just embarrassed, and I wish that she would not ever speak in public ever again. It's terrible. Sorry. I'm sorry I shouldn't be saying this. No offense to her, even though that is sounds really offensive. But uh yes. He's going to be there. Good for him. I think he's got the right attitude to go. I think that other people should emulate him. Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. That's Carl Hess through the mouthpiece of Barry Goldwater. Sorry. Why do you believe in Austrian economics as opposed to mainstream economics like Kaplan and Friedman? Well, they're when you listen to them debate that, it really gets down to minutia debates about, is there perfect uncertainty and things like that. And I'm not, without coming down on the side of every debate, I just I find that there's a lot of I've drawn more insights from Austrian economics than I've drawn from other types of economics, and there are people who are going to say, well, that's unless you take the whole system, then you're not, or whatever. If there's anything you disagree with, then it's not, and that's not the way I look. I have been more influenced. I've taken more ideas. I found more to agree with the Austrians than with the other schools. I've also studied them more. So that's not to say that I believe everything or that I think that they're right about everything or that they don't have problems. That's not my point. My point is just I've been much more influenced by them than by anybody else. Good job, Mises Institute. They've done a wonderful thing. You know, Milton Friedman was more famous and whatever, but whoever has his legacy has not popularized it the way that Lou Rockwell has. Lou Rockwell has done an amazing thing. Um, Hispanic immigrants always have vote and have always voted 9-1 Democrat. Again, what does that even mean to vote Democrat? 9-1? Just make that up. Hispanic, everyone from everywhere. So Cubans vote 9-1 Democrat. Cubans are Hispanic. So you're making really categorical statements that clearly need qualifiers. If we lived in a more federated, decentralized society, do you think immigrants would come here would be more or less? I don't know. That's hard to say. Would you debate Vosh? I don't know. Sure, I guess. I don't know Vosh really, but whatever. I guess I can say that I will since it's not going to happen. I applied to be a lab rat for forging. Well, let me know what happens. Are they ever good when you applied, so you haven't been accepted yet, so I assume you don't really know. Ronald Reagan, that is funny. Republicans have always been pro-immigrant. Immigrants still vote Democrats. Blacks vote Democrats because Dems promised them money. Yeah, but people promise money to everyone. Oh, shit. See, the problem with that, if that's the problem, the only solution, because it doesn't matter if voting patterns are because one party is paying people off, and then I agree that's what's happening. Ending immigration doesn't stop that problem because they can just go and pay people off. They can go to white people and say, hey, give us your money. And they do that. Oh, you're in college? We'll give you money. Oh, you're poor? We'll give you money. Right? You're black? We'll give you money. Blah, 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 blah. You're a single mom. You have kids out of wedlock. We'll give you money. So what is that's I'm not saying that's not a real problem. What does that have to do with immigration though? Uh, I linked him to your legalized nuke vid and he didn't respond. Shrug. Linked who? Who? I think immigrants vote less than native-born Americans. Could be. Gregory Malchuk, Hispanic. Gregory Malchuk. Guess what else Hispanics don't do? They don't get circumcised. They're for foreskin. They're against circumcision. What's your response? It's a trap. Oh yeah. I love this shirt. My female friend with benefits is an immigrant. She's extremely apolitical. Most immigrants don't really care about politics. Yeah, most people don't. Did you have Model UN in high school? No, that wasn't a thing in my high school when I was there. There were other things, other government things, shadow government things. They were all of them were just resume builders. They were completely empty and empty seats to put on your college resume. That was it. Um, and Coulter cites 2 to 8 to 2 Democrats. Some studies have say 9 to 2, 9 to 1. Right now, again, studies for all time. How many of them even vote? Why do they vote Democrat? Because they agree with their policies, or because the Democrats are nicer to them, or right? This has not always been the case, right? During the Civil War, the immigrants were all Republicans. So, right, Abraham Lincoln got elected by German Republican immigrants. Um, what do you think Thomas Sowell's books, Basic Economics, get wrong? Oh man, Pentazoid. I'm not even sure I've read that one of his, so I really couldn't say. Obviously I agree with Soul on so many things, and he's so cogent, but that doesn't mean he's right about everything. But I'm not prepared to say right here. I mean, he's obviously wrong about war stuff, and he has a very lax attitude about military police and all that stuff. But I don't even know if that's in that book, so I can't say. Um, Economics. I know. I remember that guy. Vietnamese immigrants vote Republican. Yeah, because Nixon ended the war. Um, what's your favorite Nazi zombies map? What? Oh man, I cannot keep up with you guys. Why wouldn't these anti-Hispanic, anti-immigrant arguments also justify ethnic cleansing? Why not deport the Hispanics? Why not deport their children? On what grounds? Yeah, yeah, it's all true. All true. What do we do? What do we do? There's a Hispanic guy down the street. There's a Hispanic guy in the 7-Eleven, so we're going to go and put a bag over his head and throw him across the Rio Grande. Oh my gosh. How about we just abolish fucking public schools? How about we abolish welfare? How about we abolish the government? as much as we can, and then who gives a fuck? They can make tacos and we can buy them, and that's it. I feel like it like what we become all white and then we can become anarcho-capitalists. That's not how that works. Uh, kin selection and in-group preferences are important considerations when considering voting patterns. Very vague. I don't know what to say about that. I don't look. I have a whole. I have like a 5, 6 episode podcast about democracy. Voting is fucking bullshit. It's just so. Would you have joined the model union if it was in your? I don't know what it is, so I can't say. The fact that they don't circumcise means little if California is any proof. It's the worst. Won't use their political influence to ban circumcision, and many of them even go along with it. Not as many as white Americans. Asian immigrants. Which Asians? It's a big place. Not wanting immigrants does not mean ethnic cleansing. Chill out. But there's already millions of them here, and they're voting Democrat. The whole problem, if the whole point is they're voting for Democrats, and they're still here. They're still going to be voting for Democrats. So, and yeah, it does kind of mean ethnic cleansing because you're saying the problem is these people have the wrong ideas, and instead of saying change their ideas or whatever, the problem it's get rid of those people somehow. Stop them from coming here, but the ones who are already here are already here, and that now becomes the problem. So I don't see how this isn't. And look, the people who are saying this are the white nationalists, are the white ethnostatist people, the race realists. None of them, they all say they hate multiculturalism and it's this existential threat, and also that the state is the only answer to that. So if multiculturalism is a threat and these people intrinsically vote a certain way and it can never change because it's 9-1 or whatever, 2-10, and it will never change, even going back to Reagan, and the state is there to fix it, then how is that not going to be ethnic cleansing? It's going to, how are you going to solve the problem? It doesn't make any sense except for to use the state to regulate the people away. Do you need more sunscreen? My burns all here. I got really bad last week, but I'm better now. I'm pretty tan at this point. In Missouri, a guy who was kicked from the LP for arguing against the age of consent laws. What are your thoughts? I'm against age of consent laws, and I know with absolute certainty of all the positions I take on communal showers, on circumcision, on anarcho-capitalism, on immigration, whatever it is, I know for a fact that the most contentious issue that Bitcoin, intellectual property, that my views on age of consent laws are the ones that are the most likely to get me in trouble, the ones that are going to anger the most people, that the most people are going to disagree with. Doesn't matter how much qualification I put there and what arguments I put there and how I lay them out. Doesn't matter. People are gonna freak the fuck out. Like I must be a pedophile if that's what I'm talking about, and it's not the case. It's not what I'm arguing for. I just so I agree with that position, and I keep putting myself in this spot where I'm like that's what I think. I think that engagement in society, whether we're talking about getting a job, living under the authority of your parents, consenting to have sex, consenting to marry, signing a contract, whatever it is, that these should be based on some kind of graduated cognitive emancipation. Graduated cognitive emancipation or cognitive autonomy. And I think that that type of system would preclude prepubescents from any kind of meaningful autonomy from either their parents or their guardians or whoever. It would, however, mean that many people who are postpubescent, most, if not all, and certainly not all, um, would have ever greater degrees of emancipation, much greater than they have today, to the point that they could be consenting to have sex. And I'm going to get, there's no other way. I mean, I don't even have to put an age here. I could say develop a test that can see what degree you can make decisions, that you understand judgment, that you understand cause and effect, that you understand empathy and blah, 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 whatever it is. And you administer this test. And it's a hard enough test that not everybody can pass. Not all 30-year-olds can pass. Not all 50-year-olds can pass. And if you can pass this test in an insurance company, a bank, an employer, whoever could say, okay, this person who took this test has enough judgment, enough autonomy that they can agree to this contract, to this, to working here, to this bank account, to whatever it is. That's my position. The problem with that position for many people is that that position means that some people who are now minors would be able to do things that they currently can't do. And at some level, this is absurd. Like a guy who is 2 weeks away from his 18th birthday is a child in the view of some people's mind, like a complete child. He's no different legally than a person who's 7. That's stupid. Now, other people might, well, maybe not 17, maybe 15. Well, that's not as stupid, but that's still stupid because A, there are 15-year-olds who really can't, who are still not ready, and there are some who are. So I know for a fact this is the most contentious thing. It's the most politically incorrect, but I also think it's an important topic because we have a huge problem with teens, especially. It's not so true with prepubescent people. It's not true with kids under 12, more or less. They are not really able to be autonomous by any kind of objective metric that we could align. So it's not really an issue with them, but it's for this other group, the teens. And again, my book here, Teen 2.0, and that's a well-argued, well-documented book. Lots of empiricism in there. That's where I'm getting most of this from. I think the guy who wrote it's a Harvard psychiatrist, so it's not like just some guy. Newt Gingrich recommended the book, and so did who was it? Somebody radically different from him. I don't remember who, but I know for a fact that will be the thing that I get the most trouble for. It's the thing, like, people will be, you're a pedophile, fuck you. You just want to fucking rape children, right? They call them children, 15-year-old children. And then sometimes these are the same people who talk about, well, back in the day, a man was a man, and he was out in the fields working, blah, blah, blah. And now they're like, oh, yeah, you can't have a job that works past 11 p.m. until you're 18. No. Sorry. This is how I never catch up with people. Holy cow. Holy cow. I like your ANCAP origin story. It was converted by Hop. You sound like a young Earth creationist, blah, 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 blah. So it's 9-1, and it's always been that way, and it's never changed. And also, what does that even mean? Because what a Democrat is, I pointed this out now several times. You haven't replied. What a Democrat even means has changed. So what people believe changes. And you didn't go, what are we going to do about them who are already here? You're just asserting this one point as if, even if it's true, even if that point's true, that it implies all this other stuff when it doesn't. Yep, tan with no tan lines. Thank you, Vermont. I'm against the age of consent laws as well, but that's not the hill I would die on. Yeah, that's a fair point. No one's asking anyone to die on any hills, and I'm not dying on any hills at this point. But This is insurance against me ever thinking I'm going to run for office. I'm just putting it out there. I'll never run for office because I don't believe in age of consent laws. I think we are often too shackled to the current national borders as defining future political possibilities. U.S. will break up someday. Yep, and why not? Who gives a fuck? Like, is there really skin off my back? Is if parts of the Southwest don't are not like if California broke away, I would be ruined. I would be better off if California broke away. For a more libertarian state, I would think that we should be thinking more locally. Yep, yep. The mountains of British Columbia look comparable to the Alps. Okay, and might give us a chance for a North American Switzerland, but big speculation. But what if? Well, so the British Columbia is not going anywhere, but Alberta, there's a chance Alberta could leave Canada at some point. There's major, major problems with Alberta where basically the entire Canadian federal government is being funded by Alberta at the expense of Albertans, and the Albertans know this and they're not happy about it. And because they touch the United States, they have a lot of options. So there's a movement for Alberta to actually become independent. And if that were to happen, that could be very interesting. Um, why would an ANCAP society have different age of consent laws than statist societies? Uh, because they would not have a legislature passing laws. And that's why. Are you denying that 12 million Germans moved post World War II? See, this is interesting, Gregory, because we're pointing out, yeah, maybe they do have the power to do it, so that's ethnic cleansing. That's ethnic cleansing. But then you're saying, what's the big deal? We're not talking. So we've got two. You didn't say that, Gregory, but other people are saying we're not for ethnic cleansing. We're just talking about race realism, blah blah blah. And then you're talking explicitly about no, the state can do it. The state can ethnically cleanse. Okay, those are horrible police states. I don't want there to be a horrible police state. Sure, the state can move millions of people. The state can kill millions of people too. Definitely. Like they have the ability to kill millions of people. That doesn't mean that they should. It doesn't mean that they should. That doesn't mean that. And then the state that can deport all those people can do a lot of other things. There's this belief that you're going to build this police state, this absolute police state that's going to deport all the undesirable ethnic groups, right, that vote Democrat. What about the white people who vote Democrat, by the way? Like, why do you only care about immigrants who vote for Democrats? Why is it only Hispanics who vote for Democrats? Most of the people who vote for Democrats are white. Most of the people who vote for Democrats are not Hispanic. So we're going to deport them too. Why don't you just say, fucking deport everyone who's a Democrat? Why is it only Hispanics or immigrants that you want to deport? Why not everyone who votes for Democrats? If the problem, the number one problem that you keep bringing up over and over and over and over and over again is that they vote for Democrats, then why don't you deport Democrats, right? Why is it only if they're Hispanic, then you want to deport them? But if they're just my family are Democrats, bitch. Okay, my parents are Democrats. Some of my cousins are Democrats. They vote for Democrats. They're white. They're white like me. They're smart like me. They work like me. Okay, but they vote for Democrats. So should they be deported as well? And then this police state that deported all the Hispanics, but not people who vote for Democrats generally, for some anomalous, non-racist reason, right? Is just going to be this nice libertarian state. No, fuck, it's never going to happen, dude. That's fucking delusional. You think I'm delusional when you can't see what the fuck you're talking about? That just angers me right there. Sorry. And the war on foreskin, all that, but come on. People hate pedophiles and want to push them. Yes, but a pedophile is not when you have a person who's post-pubescent is not a pedophilia. I'm sorry. And to treat somebody who has sex with a 17-year-old like a criminal, like someone like that they're 8, like they're the same thing, is fucking insane. Being anti-immigrant is not an ethno-nationalist position, dude. The other ethno-nationalists in here are saying that they can deport millions of people. So yes, it is. Uh, you'll replace age. Your replace age with a test policy seems reasonable to me, but people don't like the idea of reason when it comes to pedophilia. Well, I'm sorry, but you need to, because there needs to be some kind of law. You can't just accuse everyone of pedophilia that you don't like or have it be vague. There has to be a reason for what you do, where you do it. And I use it as a thought experiment. Let's say the age of consent is 18, which it is in some places. And let's say it's just a hard. Sometimes you have a Romeo and Juliet laws that say, like, if somebody is within a year or whatever, it's not the same. So let's say it's no Romeo and Juliet law. So if you are 18 and your partner is 2 weeks younger than you and they're still 17, boom, pedophilia. That's a crime. Stat rape right there. You are a sex offender, prison, rapist, all that, according to the law. Because that's the same as pedophilia. That's the same as the priest who takes the little boy who's 8 and fucks his brains out. No, it's not. If you think that those two things are the same, then your moral reasoning is blunt as a boulder. Okay? False. Wrong. Wrong. 17-year-old, 2 weeks away from his 18th birthday, is not the same as a 7-year-old. Okay, so then the question becomes, well, wait a second, where are we going to draw the line? And this idea that we just have to draw it at this certain, no. Why is the law line drawn there? The line is drawn there because why do we say then and not some other point? Well, because until you know a certain amount of things and you haven't blah blah blah, unless you can you understand consequences and this, only then can you, okay, well then let's have the rubric be that and not we'll just pick an age, rough it. And by the way, at 18 would be very, very late. Why would we evolve the ability to reproduce after puberty, but then not be mature enough to take care of children? That makes no sense, evolutionarily speaking, and historically speaking either. We know that people in their mid-teens had children and raised families in this country. I dare say even this century, it still happens today. So like, and it was fairly common 100, 200 years ago. So that's the truth. That's the reality. But I know that people just have this visceral. There's a lot of virtue signaling that goes on, and people can't understand it. So, but what if there are multiple tests and different standards? Clearly, yeah. And what if, yeah, there will be. The point is, and this goes back to my idea on what kind of law we have, is it's going to be tort law. So let's say two people, and ignore their age, are engaging in sex and it's consensual. And nobody around them, their parents, their family, nobody around them objects to it. Like their parents know about it and they're like, it's fine, we agree with this. There's no crime then, right? There's no tort. Now, if they don't agree, hey, you're our kid, you're not mature enough for this, you can't do this. Now it becomes a dispute. They're charging the other person for rape. Hey, you had sex with our son, he's too young, blah, blah, blah. He says no, he is young enough that you could have the son, whatever his age, say no, I want this. Like, I'm using a gay example here, but it doesn't need to be gay. What happens now? Goes to arbitration. The lawyers say, okay, let's find out. Let's do a test. Do a test of the kid. Do a test of the kid. Turns out his moral reasoning is not there. He can't make judgment. He's not able to make informed decisions. Okay, boom, rape. And there might be differences if gradations here, or boom, he knows what he's talking about. He can pass the test, whatever the test is. And when he says, I'm consenting and I know what I'm doing when I consent, then he does. It's over. Okay, so different cultures could have different rules. The idea that there has to be one rule for everybody is, I don't know. It's actually a difficult idea to hold in your head seriously. So Yeah, most of the debates between Chicago and Austrian schools are not really important. Yeah, see, this is why I don't. I think that's right. We'll have two anarcho-capitalists who are disagreeing about whether there's perfect ambiguity or whatever, or perfect ambivalence. Who cares? Interesting debate, doesn't affect politics all that much. Would a relationship between a 15-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man be legal in anarcho-capitalism? Yeah, hypothetically it could be. And you know what? Before you fucking pounce all over it, it's legal in the United States now in some states. Right? So you're setting this as like the obvious no-brainer. There are 15-year-old girls who have relationships with 45-year-old men and they get married and they have kids. They can get married in some states with parental consent. There's several states actually where that's possible. So yes, that could definitely be legal. Now that doesn't mean it'll always be legal, right? You can have 15-year-old girls, you can have 45-year-old people who can't consent because they don't have the mental aptitude for it. And their marriage contract would be void. It would not be respected by anybody. It would not be legally binding because one or both of the parties aren't able to consent. But if both of them are, then what's the problem? Uh, it's true. Trump is a Zionist. There's no question he is. No tan lines. Prove it. Come to Porcfest and see yourself. Um, yeah. The only argument of age of consent that I would have the guts to make in public is that how arbitrary it is. 70-year-old with an 18-year-old is legal, but 19-year-old, 50-year-old is not. Isn't. Yeah. Um, yeah. There's other things you can point out, like other countries like France, Italy. The age of consent in those countries and a lot of Latin America is it's 14. And so I think that would be if we had to pick a number. I've made very clear I think it should be based on cognitive ability anyway. But if we had to pick a number, yeah, I think like 14 would be way better than we currently have. I'll get hanged if I go lower than that, but like the truth is like maybe 13. But again, that's not ever there are 20-year-olds who cannot consent. There are 15-year-olds who cannot consent. There are 18-year-olds who cannot consent. But you know what? There are some in all those age groups that can. And you have to it's a huge imposition of their not only of the liberty but the restricting people's autonomy who are capable of being productive and contributing to society imposes significant opportunity costs on everybody, them most of all, and everybody else as well. And that is significant. 20 million people are teenagers in this country, and they are legally enslaved to either as wards of the state or to the state through schooling or to their parents. They're prevented from engaging in the economy. Even in wage labor, they're heavily restricted. And anything beyond wage labor, they're almost prohibited. Whether it's forming a company, signing a contract, charities, whatever it is, their abilities, and it's not to say every single one of them would become Elon Musk at 18, but some of them would become very productive, and some of them would be productive as wage laborers, and some of them would be productive as entrepreneurs and other things. And that's 20 million people. And if even a small percentage of them are really productive, that's a lot. And so we're imposing enormous costs. And also, it's not just that, the opportunity cost also means that their social development, their market development, their economic development, their cultural development, all of those are retarded because we're fucking keeping them in public schools. That would actually be great. Great. Split the country along. Like, hey, I agree with this. I'm for secession, so we agree there. Good. So back to Porkfest. Thank you, Arthur. Is COVID affecting motels and hotels opening up? I'm from Mass, so I could just drive home if I can't stay there. So currently, they're open. Hotels are open, but they're saying that they are for essential workers only. But I'm sure you're an essential worker if you say you are. I'm an essential worker. I'm doing essential work for an essential worker, if that makes sense. Um, my position isn't racial. Okay, Gregory Malchuk, no, it is, because you're constantly saying the reason we have to stop immigration is because they vote for Democrats. But millions of domestic Americans vote for Democrats. Tens of millions of domestic Americans who are not Hispanic, who are not immigrants, they're white, they were born here, their families were born here, they vote for Democrats too. So why is it we have to stop these people who vote for Democrats, but not these people who definitely also vote for Democrats? Right? That was very clear in my rant there. I'm not seeing any kind of recognition of that in your reply at all. It's like the worst thing about them is they vote for Democrats. Them and my family vote for Democrats. Okay, are you going to deport my mom and my dad and my cousin because they vote for Democrats? Their vote doesn't count any less or any more than a Hispanic person who votes for them. So Rogers Campground will be open. Yeah, and the other thing, if you have a tent, just go to Rogers Campground. Okay, right. I think it's pretty cheap. I think when I got a tent spot in Rogers, it was like I could get this wrong. I could be wrong about this, but I think it's like 20 or 30 bucks a day. It's very cheap. I am happy punting on this issue. We have better. Yeah, yeah, I understand. That's a fair point. It's a fair point, Bitcoin. I get that. Totally understand. Um, do you think a Porcfest were as big as Woodstock? Well, you've been to Rogers Campground. You know it will never be that big. You think there would be FBI and CIA agents secretly attending Porcfest? I think that it's not beyond the realm of possibility that there are some going now. And I'm not saying that with an inflated sense of whatever the Free State Project might represent, but uh, there is very little chance that the federal government isn't interested in the Free State Project to some degree. Who they would send and what they would find out, I would imagine them doing that and being like, yeah, whatever, it's not a big thing. But yeah, if it was that big, they definitely would be looking into it. I think they're probably looking into it now. Are there actually agents there? I don't know. Um, there was a lot of demagoguery surrounding the price gouging recently because of masks and hand sanitizers. Okay. Everyone is a Fed until proven guilty otherwise. Fair point. What about hotels and motels? Arthur Rene, I did talk about this at the start of the video. You can definitely go back and watch from the beginning, and I do cover all this. There are hotels and motels, but you have to be quote an essential worker. Age of consent was phased in by feminists. Why do you think they see? A lot of it goes back to people like Jane Addams, and these people were not really feminists; they were progressives. Age of consent in the Vatican is 12. Ha, lol. Um, oh my gosh, people, it's taking me forever to catch up. But people in general do have moral reasoning blunt as a boulder. Yeah, they do. You're sad you cannot go to Porcfest. I'm sorry that you can't go, Luke. It would have been nice to see you. Maybe if teenagers worked. Yeah, if people. It's kind of like a circular argument where they're kept out of the workforce and then people say we don't need them. But if they were there, they would And they say they can't do it because, look, they're not doing it. Yeah, they're not doing it because they're not allowed to do it. Guess I'm an essential worker now. It's awesome. Welcome to the Essential Worker Club. According to the UN and other organizations, child labor is defined as stuff like the exploitation of children that deprives them of harms them morally, mentally. Yeah. Well, but we've got socialists who say all wage labor is exploitation. So everything I do is essential. We're all essential workers here, people. Technically, I'm an essential worker, but I work for a fractional reserve bank. He's a Fed. Boom. Nationalists don't want Democrats deported. Depends. We are evicting my child from my wife's womb tomorrow. Oh, congratulations, Luke. I knew you were expecting. I didn't know it was that soon. Congratulations, though, Luke. I hope it goes well. For real. I focus on immigration, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so but you're not being pragmatic at all because before the immigration laws changed, right, 1965, whenever, the Democrats had power repeatedly and they did horrible things, right? FDR was a Democrat and he had a huge Democratic majority and he did terrible things, and so did Woodrow Wilson. And they didn't have millions of Latinos voting for them. So, yeah, that they were voted in by white Anglo-Saxon Europeans, WASPs, white people. So, don't I hate it when I'm lectured about being pragmatic and then I point out that this does you are just nibbling at the edge. You're not striking the root. You're ignoring the root. And then I'm not being pragmatic. Most nationalists are closet racists, if not. I don't think that's fair. I don't think most nationalists are racist. There are many American nationalists who are pluralistic. There are many American nationalists who they don't care if you're black as long as you wave an American flag and do all that patriot shit that I find nauseating. You're on Team America and they're happy. I don't think most of them are racists, even in an implicit bias way. Nationalists don't want any more immigrants who vote Democrat, whether they are. But what about people already here who vote Democrats? Please don't circumcise. Oh, we've already covered this. He's not going to. Ashkenazi Jews vote for Democrats. So do Chinese people, and they have high IQs. So best wishes on the eviction. Race realists hate Ashkenazi Jews. What's up, Length? Porcfest in a month. What do you name your YouTube channel like that? Yeah, Porcfest got as big as, yeah. I don't know if there's any place in New Hampshire that would be big enough for that. Um, would you in favor theory attest of how pro-liberty someone is before? Look, open borders, blah, blah, blah. If we don't have open borders and we're going to have immigration, yeah, sure, have that be the basis. Jim Jesus made a tweet that the creature from Jekyll Island is a conspiracy theory book. Okay, well, it is a conspiracy theory book in the sense that it talks about a conspiracy theory, but it's not a conspiracy theory. Like everything in there is known fact. Like that, we know they met on Jekyll Isle. This isn't debated. No one claims that didn't happen. So I don't know what the basis of that would be. If you're an ethno-nationalist, you have a much better chance politically, practically, in finding a homogeneous sub-region in the United States and attempting secession than, quote, cleansing the entire U.S. of your outgroup. That's very, very true. Decentralization and secession for the win. Thanks for your well wishes. Good luck with your child being born. Godspeed. I have libertarian tendencies. I was just asking about nationalism and ANCAP. Fun to see you get riled up. Well, to be fair, I got more riled up at Gregory Melchip than you. But okay, just because someone gets riled up though, it doesn't mean you had a point. Please. Um, when people say IQ doesn't measure anything or intelligence, I want to ask if they would rather their child have an IQ of 60 or 160. Yeah. Jekyll Island is actually pretty nice. I don't think a test for entry would be reliable. Rather, people should be evicted for openly promoting socialism once they're out of a certain age, say 27. Evicted by who? If you have a private homeowners association, I'm fine with that, obviously. But doesn't Creature for Jekyll Island talk about some organization called the Round Table created by Cecil Rhodes? Guess it's been more than 10 years since I've read that book, so it's possible. I've heard of the Round Table. I don't know if I read about it there. But again, is that secret? That's like saying the CFR is a secret, or and we know that it's not, or the Trilateral Commission or the Bilderberg, and all those are real things. So, you know, give Alex Jones credit for making that stuff popularized. So if there's no speaking events planned for Porcfest, then what's going to go on? A whole bunch of libertarians are going to get there and have a fucking good time. There are going to be people there, connections made, fun, discussions. Who knows? It's going to be anarchy. I did not say I had a point. I'm not trying to be hostile. Okay, fair enough. Why do you think libertarians have such a hard time debating Sam Sater? I've not watched his debates there. I've not really watched Sam Sater enough to have an answer to that, or even say I agree that it's true. Brian Kaplan is interesting. He makes the best open borders case. Ironically, his parenting book, which I just read, is basically a pro eugenics pamphlet. Yeah, I just listened. Was it you? Somebody was recommending that I listen to the Brian Kaplan Bob Murphy, not debate, but podcast. On the Bob Murphy show, he interviewed Kaplan, and it was really good actually. So I would recommend people reading that. And Brian Kaplan has twin sons, which I've seen Liberty Forum or Students for Liberty conference. He's brought them with him, and he's very what do you call it, woke when it comes to like genetic determinism when it comes to people's personality. So he is not a blank slater by any stretch. So he's not somebody that, oh, he's for open borders, therefore he must be a progressive. No, he's not. Sam Sater makes me uncomfortable. Yeah, and so does David Parkman makes me uncomfortable. They try and come across as reasonable, but they would definitely throw you into a gulag if you got in the way of their plan. Sam selectively chooses intellectual libertarians except for Dave Smith and Walter Block. Yeah, so he's like the Molyneux of, you know. The other thing is like it's on his show, so he can talk over you, and it's not a fair debate forum. If he's such a great debater, he should go to the Soho Forum and debate somebody there. Got an opinion on Berkeley removing their SAT tests? Not really, because the SAT tests don't really mean anything. I would go to Porcfest to talk to Tom Woods about music. Well, you would have the opportunity to do that. I think Luke should be passing out It's a Boy cigars. I don't smoke, but otherwise, that's a good idea. There'll be some speaking events, scaled back though. I want more panels, fewer solo presentations. It's definitely going to be interesting. I'm really excited, actually. Is there an orgy tent at Porcfest like the Burning Man festivals? There have been in the past. Sam Sater stacks the deck a bit, but he's actually well informed. So if you're off your game, he can make you look like a fool. Yeah. So one problem I think libertarians have is that in general, libertarians are much better informed about their opposition than vice versa. And so when we have debates, very, very often we're debating people who don't have a clue about libertarianism. And so you can get into this position where you're used to debating somebody who just thinks you're Ayn Rand or, whatever, you hate children, blah, blah, blah. And so then if you do encounter somebody who knows more, it could be jarring, I suppose. You should debate Vosh. You would be the first intelligent libertarian debater. Don't tell that to Molyneux. Brian Kaplan makes the point that the economy is vastly enhanced by the free movement of both the IQ scores and blah, blah, blah. So I'm always, look, Kaplan is not an Austrian, so he's not doing this a priori. He's looking at the empirical data. And his claim, if you listen to the Bob Murphy Kaplan discussion, which I'll recommend, you protectionist, anti-immigrant people to do. So look up the Bob Murphy podcast, and it's maybe a month or two old, where he interviews Brian Kaplan. Kaplan says that the net effect of open immigration would basically double the wealth of the world, and that would not all be concentrated in some people's hands. That a massive amount would accrue basically to everybody. Um, Also, nationalism was a left-wing thing until 5 seconds ago, but whatevs. Yeah. Well, the Republicans get their talking points from the progressives. I'm an Indian living in India, so maybe there's a communication issue. What book do I need to read to get an introduction to anarchism? Go to my YouTube, search my name, Lengthyounarther, and Best Libertarian Books, Part 1 and Part 2. And then one that I'll name right here that's not in those lists because I've only subsequently read it is The Problem with Political Authority by Michael Huemer. Again, that's The Problem with Political Authority by Michael Huemer, Huemer. Check that out. Geez. Rush Limbaugh is a uncomfortable conservative that decides when breaking liberties is necessary when the Constitution isn't essential during a major crisis. Blah blah blah. Concern about immigration shifting the policy in a democracy is the most serious anti-immigration argument. I guess it comes down to the details. Sam isn't that informed at all. Molyneux destroyed him along with Walter Block. Um, uh, Being concerned about immigration is the norm in most of the world. People assume ethno-nationalist sympathies is weird. Just because something's a norm doesn't make it true, though, right? So what? Super Mario and Enki. I don't even know what those are. Personal question. I'm working on my associate's degree because I get it free for me for college. Are associate's degrees worth anything by themselves, in your opinion? Uh, they're not worth. It depends what it's in and where you're going, but like I don't think they're worth that much. You don't smoke then. I don't smoke anything. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. Who are your favorite leftists? Oh, that's a good question. Glenn Greenwald, definitely. Jimmy Dore, I guess I do like Jimmy Dore, even though he's full of shit and he's a horrible communist. But I do like him. I think he's funny, and he's incisive sometimes in a good way for the right reasons. So Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald. If you want to call Sam Harris a leftist, I'd call him that. Sure, Sam Harris. Let's see. Oh, Max Blumenthal. All right, I like Max Blumenthal. Again, these guys are they're usually wrong about everything, but then they're really good on like one or two issues, and I'll give them for that. So Blumenthal's really good on Zionism and Israel. He's just wrong about everything else, but he sounds reasonable when he talks about that stuff. So let's see who else. Uh, I mean, if Roderick Long counts as a leftist, then Roderick Long. Um, that's kind of a stretch, though. That should be good enough. Ba-ba-ba. Dave Smith did really well against Sam Sater. Otherwise, yeah. See, well, Dave Smith is very smart. He's quick on his feet, and he is, pretty well informed. So he would be a good debater. I'm super insecure about IQ. It would terrify me to take an IQ. Don't taste one. Don't take one. You have a job. You don't need one. My grandfather started a private school in Brooklyn based on IQ tests. Before the co-founder died, he told me they faked all the tests. Ridiculous. Enki is a spaced repetition software. It overcomes the problem Kaplan mentioned of info retention. It uses algorithms to retain tons of information. Every student should use it. Okay. Um, 90% of houses in Singapore are government owned, and yet Singapore is ranked as one of the freest economies on the planet. I didn't know about that Singapore. I do know in Hong Kong that it's the case that everything, like all the land is owned by the state except for like one church, like one church. And that their zoning, the way that they have decided to allocate it, is the reason housing is so expensive there. I did not know that about Singapore though. I bet you like I bet you like Glenn Greenwald's boyfriend. Well, don't know what he looks like, but I can assume he's Brazilian and has a foreskin. What's Sam Harris right about? Sam Harris is not right about gun control, but he's pretty good and pretty reasonable compared to other leftists. He's pretty good about the First Amendment kind of stuff. So having somebody be pretty much right on the First Amendment and pretty good on the Second Amendment, it's hard for me not to give him a pass to a large degree. His stuff on like ethics, I don't agree with, but and his foreign policy stuff, I don't agree with. The Muslim stuff, it's hit or miss. Some of it I think is fine, some of it not so much. He has Trump derangement syndrome, which is sad to see somebody who I generally respect his intelligence, and he has a clear case of it, and that's kind of sad. It's sad that Trump is living in his head like the way that he does. Do you think America would be a much better place if things were more deregulated to eliminate most of the issues today, like Federal Reserve? Yep, absolutely. I agree with that. Um, who are your favorite dead leftists? Hmm, dead leftists. Probably would have to be Randolph Bourne because of the Anti-War Institute, and Is Gabriel Coco dead? If Gabriel Coco is dead, I'll include him. Uh, I'm not sure that he is. He might be though. Who's another? Another leftist who's dead would be like uh, William F. Buckley. The worst type of people are the Aaron Clay types that think they are geniuses because they got a 130 on an I-line IQ test. I don't know who Aaron Clary is. Sounds like classic midwits though. Uh, why do we need immigrants and why don't we invest in our own people? Well, we don't need our own people. I mean, you're kind of wiggle where there is need. We would be better off with immigrants. We would be better off if people could move freely, which doesn't necessarily mean immigrants. That means some places will lose people and not have immigrants. But we would be richer if we had immigrants. I like Aaron Clary, but that is so true. I don't know who this is. Who is Aaron Clary? That's really bad in Hong Kong that it's communism. Yeah, and Vice did an article about it, and it's fascinating because they try and dance around like the problem with Hong Kong is the free market because the city owns everything. And it's like, what? The city owns everything, so it's a free like leftists have so ingrained anti-market bias that even when they see a complete state monopoly, they think the problem is deregulation. It's they they really that is like the defining characteristic, an anti-market bias. I think that's what even Kaplan said is the left is anti-market and the right is anti-left, which doesn't mean they're pro-market necessarily. They just love those liberal tears. So I can come to Porcfest if I can stay with you in the orgy tent. I will not be staying in the orgy tent. I might set up my own tent though. Like I've hinted, I've said this a couple times. I've used lockdown. I have learned how to do hypnosis. I am now a hypnotist. I'm going to have a hypnotherapy tent and an erotic hypnotherapy tent. And I will have to do a video on hypnosis because that shit is fucking whack, dude. Holy crap. Um, did you ever follow Alexander Cockburn before he died? He founded Counterpunch. He was a lunatic Marxist, but hilarious. His brother. See that Cockburn name sounds familiar, but that's probably from Scott Horton. So no, I didn't follow him. I can't say I know anything about him. Aaron Clarey lets people write him questions and he answers them. Who is he though? Oh my God, why am I so far behind? Hong Kong should secede from China. They never should have been part of China. Do you consider Benjamin Tucker a leftist, even though he's an individualistic anarchist who have advocated workers' rights? So this goes back to the old days of YouTube. This would have been something that was debated a lot, and I think that it becomes kind of arbitrary and um, semantic where you put somebody like Benjamin Tucker. So yeah, same thing with people like Roderick Long. I feel like there's a lot of left libertarians who are trying very hard to include people into their circle, but they don't necessarily disagree with ANCAPs in a way that would make them not ANCAPs. So I don't, and I haven't read enough. I've heard of Tucker or Ben Tucker and read some of his stuff, but not enough that I'm going to characterize him one way or another. Lysander Spooner is an obvious answer of the dead leftists. No, nobody on the left is as good as Lysander Spooner. That is no. Lysander Spooner is fucking the man. There's no way he's a leftist. Um, didn't Sam Harris claim that it's scientifically proven that it's immoral to lower taxes? I have never heard him claim that, but his view of the state is very, very permissive and disturbing. It does bother me. He kind of has this, well, if this is beneficial for the state, then it has some moral quality that should be recognized. Now, he's not an absolutist. He does seem aware that there is such a thing as state abuse, that we should, that it's not a benevolent institution. So there's some nuance there that makes him better than a lot of the reflexive leftists out there. But I don't know that Zurapax, but it wouldn't surprise me if that turned out to be true. Thaddeus Russell can't stand Sam Harris because of his views on foreign policy. Well, I have one of my very first videos was titled Sam Harris, the Malice of an Atheist. And I think that a lot of that video was unfair, but I still also think that he's pretty wrong about foreign policy, as are basically everyone on the left who's not Jimmy Dore. Buckley was a leftist. Yes, that was a joke, but he was a leftist. Because Buckley said that the United States should have a totalitarian bureaucracy to fight the Soviet Union. So that sounds pretty leftist to me. Christopher Hitchens. There we go. I do like him as a leftist. He is a good leftist. He was very anti-Clinton as well. That's a good point, Bitcoin. I agree with that. Gabriel Kolko. Yes, he's dead. Okay, Gabriel Kolko wrote Triumph of Conservatism. That's a really great book. How about Howard Zinn? I don't like Howard Zinn. I hate Howard Zinn. I hate Howard Zinn for things that are not entirely his fault. I hate the way that he's characterized in Good Will Hunting. I think that is so absurd. Aaron Clary lets people write him questions and he answers them. He's a libertarian, but not a good one. I've never heard of this guy. So why not eliminate the welfare state so more immigrants come over more and bring more jobs? Yeah, let's eliminate the welfare state. Howard Zinn is probably one of the most common names I heard around public schools. Yep, because the left just elected him as the greatest historian ever because he wrote the People's History of the United States, which is just full of bullshit. Um, yes, please do a video on hypnosis. Just relax, listen to the sound of my voice, let everything fade away. You've been watching me for years, listening to my voice, so just lay back and close your eyes and let everything fade away. Yada yada. 10 minutes later, you're my vegetable slave. That's basically how it works. 5 for 5 guys in my bed, turning them into sex slaves. Um, Dave Smith has become quite immigration restrictionist. Smith claimed that immigrants are net drains on the welfare state in the U.S. and is empirically false, yet he keeps bringing it up. Sad. That is sad. He should have Brian Kaplan on his show. Wouldn't that be? It would be awesome to see Kaplan and Smith go at it. Because Kaplan is fucking smart and he's fucking quick. He can quib with the best of them. Clary is literally just a YouTuber. Like me. I bet he's got more subs than I do, though. Would you consider Patrick Henry an anarchist? No, but awfully damn close. Doesn't celebrating Memorial Day glorify war? Yeah, it basically does, and it should be the opposite. Lysander students started a base postal service and outcompeted the USPS, and then they were forced to shut down. Yep, and he declared war on the Constitution after that. Would you agree with Stephan Kinsella's criticism against Spooner, in some senses, of him justifying IP and slavery being unconstitutional, knowing he was against it? Fun fact, Kinsella actually watches my channel sometimes, and when I saw him at Porcfest, he came and thanked me. He said he liked the channel and he liked these satire videos, which I only made like 4 of, but they were apparently well received. But to your question, I don't know. Spooner was a socialist. I don't think. No, come on. Anarchist socialist, but a socialist. Well, anarchist socialist is not a socialist. After your hypnosis video, will you make a video on home brewed chloroform? I have not. I have not um, perfected my recipe on home brewed chloroform yet, so that will not be happening. Dude, 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 dude. Kinsella is a circumcision apologist. What? If I see him at Porcfest, we'll have a talk. Citation needed. Yes. Anarchism means a non. Yeah, and Kropotkin had some stuff in there about mutualism and survival of the fittest, but the fittest in terms of a social animal. And yeah, there's lots of stuff there that's good. But I don't know enough about Kropotkin to talk about him too much. How is it characterized in Good Will Hunting? In Good Will Hunting, Matt Damon, who is portrayed as the smartest person who ever lived, who's superior to everybody else intellectually, just says that The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn is the best book ever, and that's the only book that's on his level, and every other book is stupid in comparison. And so a movie by leftists about how important knowledge is and wisdom is and being smart is, and it's sapio fetishism. That movie is pure sapio fetishism. Then says Howard Zinn's the greatest historian ever, which is a ghastly lie. Kaplan is such a super nerd. I love it. Yeah, he's into comic books. I am, look, there's a longtime friend of mine that I met on YouTube. He's a subscriber. He doesn't watch very much because he's got a family and he's got a business. He's a capitalist. He works hard. He's a total libertarian. He owns his own business. He's got 4 kids. He lives in the UK and he wants to move to America. He loves America. He wants to move to America. He wants free speech and guns and homeschooling. He wants all that stuff. And it's like impossible for him to move here legally. It's almost impossible. It's so ridiculous. It's absolutely a travesty. Got back from fishing. Everyone's out in the parks. Never seen him this used. Goku versus Superman. I did a video, The Truth, about the Goku versus Superman death battle. Go check it out. It was one of my best videos. I liked your satire videos. Why did you only make 4 of them? All of those videos came from sparks of inspiration. I just had an idea and I was like, that is a good idea. I'm gonna make a video on that. That's a cool take on it. And a couple months ago, I had another one that sounded pretty funny. There's 1 or 2 good ones in there, um, but they it's usually like you have the idea and then the whole video writes itself in like 1 second, and then you just have to record it. And I can't force myself to do that though. I can't be like, okay, I need a satire video on, boom. So that's why. Tom Woods has Brian Kaplan on his show, and they never discuss immigration. Yeah, but Kaplan can talk about a lot of things. So the feds restricted what benefits immigrants can receive. Blah blah blah. Dave Smith and Tom Woods have a problem that they refuse to hear criticism of certain libertarians. They will go to their grave defending Molyneux and will never. Yeah, I thought it bugs me too when I hear Smith talk about Molyneux and like he either doesn't know or he strawmans the critiques of Molyneux, because when I've heard him defend Molyneux, he never brings up he never brings up the true Sheeb stuff. He never brings up the intellectual property, the fact that he lied about that he went back on his morals. He never brings up that he lied to Joe Rogan, even though Smith has been on Rogan and whatever. Um, it's just like he's ignoring all the big things, or he doesn't know. I don't know. I don't understand it. And his critique is kind of like, well, he's brought more people to liberty or whatever. Yeah, he's also like poisoned the well to millions of people as well. So if the extent of your libertarianism is that you're a Molyneuxian, you're a Steph bot, then you're not very libertarian. But Molyneux is creepy. Do you believe Matt Damon wrote Good Will Hunting? I don't know, but he took credit for it, so it could be. I could agree with Kaplan's premise if neither the immigrants nor their children would be eligible for citizenship, which I believe he said he's. Yeah, well, Kaplan, I think, is most famous for his book, The Myth of the Rational Voter. So he does not believe in democracy. He is one of the most cogent critics of democracy that has existed, really. That book is a must read. So he is 100%. This is Pareto efficiency, most good for the most people, economic reasons. He doesn't think that anyone should vote. I'm against democracy too. So it doesn't really matter in my traditional. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's a whole thing about traditional anarchists, and well, it's just semantic. I really don't care. What did you respect most about Malcolm X when you read the autobiography of Malcolm X? Um, that he believed in black people owning guns, that he believed in raising up yourself and self-improvement and making your life better by your own actions, by not doing anything, not criticizing the white man for something that you haven't done yourself. So until you own a factory, shut the fuck up about factory owners. He believed, in the words of defunct YouTuber Anton Beatty, black capitalism, so all that stuff. Oh, and he was a cogent critic of liberals, the panhandling, fucking plantation Democrat liberals who ply the blacks with their fucking snake oil. Oh, his invective for them is beautiful stuff. He was clearly a brilliant man, and also probably a gay hooker at one point. Um, I'm quite sure that if you sat down Emma Goldman and tried to explain anarcho-capitalism, she would shoot you in the head. Well, at least we agree on gun rights then. Stefan needs to be a gatekeeper for his donations. I'm in a private Facebook group with Dave Smith and will try to bring those things up, but he will literally just write them off as character defamation by the left and by half the libertarians who used to follow him. Smith claims that Molyneux isn't a white nationalist, even though he clearly is. I've seen stuff say that like Hispanics are a different species, that we're an R species and they're a K species. I've also seen him say that fences can keep people in. He never brings up the fact that Molyneux is a cop apologist, which he is. It's ridiculous too that he compared Ron Paul, my father, a Klan reformer, but then he supported Trump. What the fuck? I can understand there's reasons to support Trump, but like to call Ron Paul a Klansman, and then support Trump, and he had debates. I remember he would have these like debates with 3 or 4 other people, and he would be like, he's not an anarcho-capitalist, so he's shit. You can't trust him. And then it's like, hey, all hell Trump. Okay, where the fuck did your print? And that's fine, but like then he's like, I am the most principled guy ever, and philosophy never changes, and philosophy is always right. And I'm the Ubermensch who thought of all this, and I came up with UPB and blah. God, it's just so nauseating. It's unfortunate the good critiques of Molyneux have never been about his evolving policies. I have zero problem with whatever his politicals are. It's just the narcissism stuff. And the fact that his policies change, but then he pretends like they never changed and that they're immutable and that you're stupid if you don't agree with him, even though he's clearly changed his mind. So, and he's a hypocrite with the whole intellectual property stuff and the true sheep stuff and the not doxing and blah, blah, blah. Stefan was the second ANCAP I found on YouTube in 2013. He's a huge influence on me. Sad he went the nationalist route. He's done some great stuff. I mean, everyone knows I'm not the biggest fan of Steph Bott, but he's done some wonderful stuff. There's no question about it. And he's a fine wordsmith when he's not talking about his own stuff. When he's regurgitating other ideas, he can do it pretty well. And he has a certain charisma. I don't like it. I find it creepy, but it resounds with a lot of people. So Gene Epstein always puts Dave Smith in his place when they debate. Well, Gene Epstein has more experience and is smarter. I was a huge Molyneux fan for a few years until I found FDR Liberated and started reading their articles. I was ready to defoo my family and give everything to Steph. I was a bad libertarian back then. I'm I'm on I'm on the FDR Liberated. They posted some of my videos there. Um, so is Kinsella right criticizing Spooner? Listen. I'd have to read his criticism to answer that question. I do not. I cannot say I don't know. If people's like Sarwark's fault, Sarwark called the Mises Institute racist, and now all those guys think no one can be a racist. He did more than support Trump. When Trump won, he uploaded a video saying, "We did it. We saved the Western civilization." It was pretty obvious he got paid by Trump campaign. That would be amazing if he did, but who knows? It's a boy cry wolf story. Malcolm X became an erudite man in prison before being a pretty gangster. That's what I respect about it. Yeah, that is apparently true. He apparently did read the entire dictionary in prison and learned every word, from aardvark to Zanzibar. Molyneux goes with whatever fad the dissident right have at any time. If it's a libertarian 1 year, yeah, it's true. He's just searching. Look, he's running a business, and so I understand that. But then to pretend like he's philosophically, the philosopher king of ages, when he's basically just doing clickbait, the truth about that. And by the way, that's just so pretentiously horrible, and so much of that is so wrong. I'm sure I've told this. He did the truth about Gandhi. Whatever was in that video, he at one point said that the Mughal Empire had ruled India for 750 years, which is 500 years more than what they actually did. So clearly factually wrong. So this truth about video is laced with complete falsehoods. So I commented that, and people were like, "What's your agenda? Why are you doing this? Why are you asking this question?" I'm like, I'm just pointing out one of the things he said in the video was 100% verifiably wrong. You can look it up on Wikipedia yourself. And he wasn't just off by a little bit; he was off by 500 years. I wonder what other details, because I'm not an expert on India, so like he could have said shit that I don't know is wrong. I knew enough to know the Mughal Empire was a 250-year thing, not a 700-year thing. So his fucking cult people like defend no matter what he does and attack you. It's like the Scientology thing. If you say anything about them, then they're like, "Oh, what's wrong with you? You have a messed up. You're a what's the word they use? A repressive person." Have you read the book Why Nations Fail? Nope. Did you hear it? No, I have stopped watching Trump more than 4 years ago. He actually has a pretty good voice. Well, he was an actor. Um, why do you like the people's history of the United States? No, because he thinks it's all unions and things like that. That's wrong. In his review of Freddie Mercury video, he just had to sing a Queen song. The guy's narcissism is absurd. He probably is a decent singer, and so he's like, I'm going to show off. But of course, if you're a musician, you would know better. That's one of those things. That's actually a good point about him. He knows enough that an average person who doesn't know anything about the topic will be impressed. So if you don't know anything about libertarianism, he sounds like he's very knowledgeable about it. And he is decently knowledgeable about it. And if you're not a musician or an actor, he probably seems like he's a great actor or a great singer, because most people can't tell the difference between, an okay college singer and a great singer. But people who can are like, yeah, this is LARPing. This is not an aria. This is not Pavarotti. This is LARPing. This is karaoke at the bar. And this is not philosopher king Aristotle level shit. This is, you know, retrograde kind of repackaged, repurposed in bad rapping. So, good night, all. Good night. Thank you, Luke. Good luck tomorrow. Best wishes. Um, I hope it goes well. Congratulations. Have you read the book Lies the Teacher Told Me? I have not. Do a truth about video about yourself where you basically say that you're Jesus and Savior of your community. I should do that. Would you consider Trump the closest thing to a white nationalist president? No, that would probably be Woodrow Wilson. Steph ignores all the honest criticism of his videos, finds the people making ad homs, and replies with not an argument. These replies get boosted to the top and suppress real comments. Yep. He just ignores when places where they get strong arguments against what he's saying, he just ignores it, buries it, and then he strawmans everybody. And remember when Molyneux went to a Polish? I didn't watch it. I remember hearing about it. Yes, Stefan was my introduction to the NAP property right. I had no idea about guys like Rothbard and Mises and thought I knew everything about everything when I was a Stefan. Yeah, there's this. This is like the appeal of a guru, right? You find the one guy and he teaches you everything you need to know, and you don't need to read anybody else because he's the be all and end all. And this is not just Molyneux. This is many people do this, and it's like, no, no. You need to read. You need to learn more. Nobody has all the answers. Anyone who thinks that they do is a liar, or a crook, or delusional, or dangerous, or all of those things. So um, they're delusional. I think my best guess is that Molyneux is delusional. I don't know that for sure. It's possible that he is more cynical than that, but I believe that he's delusional. That's my best guess. That he wants to be famous, he wants to be respected, he wants to be seen as this philosopher king, this great. He wants to be esteemed for his intellect, right? Which is kind of makes me think that he might be psychoanalyzing people is not smart, blah blah blah. But I'm going to do it anyway, bearing in mind that it's not necessarily true. But like it does seem like he's insecure about his intelligence, because otherwise, why would he care? Why would that be so important to him? But it very evidently is. Possibility is that it's just cynical. It's how he makes money. But I think if that was it, he could make money in a better way. He could be a better what would be the term, influencer, if he wasn't so uh, unabashedly narcissistic and egotistical. I'm guessing Length would suggest Lincoln was closer to white nationalism than Trump. Yeah, that I said Wilson, but yeah, Lincoln would be closer. Lincoln was definitely more of a white nationalist than Trump was. Like, oh, there's no comparison. Uh, do you consider military conscription as bad? That's a good question. Um, no, if it's not forever, right? So since conscription is not for life and for the life of your children, I don't think it's as bad. Has Molyneux ever been to Porcfest? Yes, he has. I've seen him there. I made a video about it. The first video, if you just look at my video titled Stefan Molyneux, it's me reviewing his appearance in Porcfest in 2012 or 2013. Yeah, his Poland documentary was all about him and his impressions about it. But yeah, the documentary is about how important I am. Also, Poland, Stronk, the Zodia, whatever that means. No one speaks Chinese, Tortoise Stream. Okay. I meant the last 50 years. Oh, in the last 50 years. So going back to 1970, mm, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. That's not a, but none of them were really. So I love talking about Molyneux. I find his case so interesting. He's a total narcissist, and I love to break him down. Okay. Molyneux is interesting. It is interesting to see somebody like that, like a study in personalities. Molyneux's weak justifications for NAP helped me see the problems with the NAP, which led me to better ethical justifications for libertarianism. So you learn what not to do. Michael Malice talks about how professors are people that are bad at everything, but are less bad at being intelligent. They're unintelligent, but their strength is intelligence. That applies to Steph. Steph would actually love to be compared to the intelligentsia and to the literati. Steph isn't dumb, just not as smart as he thinks he is. Yeah, professors aren't dumb either. What's the term? The midwits. People who are smarter than average, so they can outsmart people, but they aren't, geniuses, whatever that means. Um, and yeah, I can remember. Actually, when I became an anarchist, I don't know if I've told this part of the story. So, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Joe Sober, and all that stuff. Just before that, I had been exposed to the ideas, and the ethical arguments were compelling to me. But I was having a hard time. Like, I wanted a government, but I wanted a government that was not based on taxes and was not based on monopolies or regulations, right? So, oh, we'll have it be based on tolls, but then it just gives itself all the roads, and right? I was like, well, that doesn't make sense because then everyone's paying too much for roads, and so I remember I had a project. I think I was a sophomore in college, and I had a project with this very cute guy named Eric, and it wasn't about that at all. It's totally unrelated topic, and we were discussing it, and we did our schoolwork very quickly, and then we got into a debate about government, and I basically argued against like universal health care and all these socialist things, and I used the arguments, taxation is theft, and non-aggression principle and all that stuff. And he said, yeah, but if that's true, then no government should be allowed, and there should be, we should basically have no government. He didn't say anarchy, but that was it was. Now I remember being able to debate around that and be like, oh no, like it wouldn't be anarchy because you could have, toll roads, and you could have lotteries, and you could have fees for service. And he was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, sure. But I remember thinking in my head, like, yeah, I like convinced him, like I wanted to debate with Eric Liebig. Oh shit. Oh, Eric, that was not his real name. No. And I wanted to debate with him, but I knew that he could have made stronger arguments that I would not have been able to debate. I knew that even though I won the debate with him just because he didn't have a lot of ammunition, I would have lost against somebody who knew better. And that was actually one of the things that made me evolve. But I think a lot of people would be like, I won. Yeah, fuck, I'm the smartest. I'm smarter than this fucking college freshman who's getting a, whatever management degree. I don't know what Eric got his degree in, but like, no. And I was like, oh, I fucking don't know. And like, I don't have a good enough argument against a hypothetical steel man. I don't think Steph is dumb either. He's just not nearly as smart as he claims. No. Well, he claims he's the smartest person in 6,000 years. So, you know, he could say he's in the top 95th percentile and he'd probably be right. Well, maybe. Government without taxes sounds great. What's your view of HHH's physical removal helicopter meme? Well, the helicopter meme is funny. I don't think you should throw people out of helicopters. look, I believe in private property, and I believe in private property owners having protective covenants or whatever. Um, so, but I think that they would be relatively small, and there'd be plenty of places in a anarcho-capitalist society that would not have stringent rules, right? They'd be taking any comers just because they're poor or the land barriers are low. You could end up with kind of like outlaw areas or whatever, where the dejected people go. So the idea, I think the idea is fine and it would work in practice on like a micro scale. I do not think it would work on a macro scale. I just think that you would need a state to make it work on a macro scale, and I don't think that the cost that having a state would impose would be worth it. And so, yeah. I don't really like Jim Jesus anymore, but he is 100% correct that we should not be afraid to criticize libertarians, and we shouldn't be. Also, though, we should not like degrade into like just infighting. Fuck, dude, we're just libertarians. We're on the margins. There's much bigger problems to point out and criticisms to be made. So it shouldn't all be about Molyneux. Fuck, let's stop with the Molyneux stuff. Shit, I've done it. It's been done to death. Let's fucking criticize Trump or Obama or Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein or whoever. That would be a much better use of our time. Even though I don't like people like Trump or other Republicans, I still have an urge to defend the ridiculous attacks they get from. Yeah, I get it. The left is so stupid, it's hard not to be like, God damn, I hate you people. Whoa, my mind is blown. I watched your anti-Molyneux videos back in the day when I was a Steph fan. I didn't even know you were the same person when I met you at Porcfest. Well, I have a beard now, and I lost weight. I was fat and clean shaven back in the day. Um, Rothbard said he became an anarchist because he said a liberal friend pointed out that the minarchist view was inconsistent. There you go. I just went back to your Rise of the ANCAP YouTubers video and watched a long time ago. I didn't know you were the same person. I mean, that video is not that old. That's like a 3 or 4 year old video. The channel's been here for 9 years. I was uploading shit in 2011. But is intelligence the problem with Molyneux? No, it's not. It's not that he's not smart. It's that he's a narcissist and a liar and has no virtue. But let's stop with Molyneux. Fucking don't want to talk about him anymore. Um, can we criticize Bill? Well, I don't know enough about him, but yes, he's a piece of shit. Length used to be a fat, clean-shaven Burger King manager. That's false. I was never a manager. I was a crew leader. Get it right. Why don't you like Jim Jesus? I look. I mean, that's not. I know that's not addressed to me. I get along with Jim Jesus. Fine. I've been here since 2015. I just never commented. Yeah, most people are lurkers. Most people don't comment. Why do you think people like Rothbard, Hoppe are not mainstream but Friedman? Yeah, this always bothers me because even if they're not right about everything, which they're certainly not, like they seem brilliant to me and their ideas seem really interesting and powerful. And you could even refine that further. Why is Milton Friedman famous and David Friedman's not? Huh? Right? Because he's got the pedigree and he's got the insight and he's got the education. That's for damn sure. And I think that it is because their ideas are more radical, they don't fit within the Overton window the way Friedman's kind of does, and so they're anathema, and people just don't take them seriously. Uh, like you could just say anarchists don't take them seriously. I don't like Jim Jesus because I think he's contrarian, picks fights just to be different. Well, maybe he's never picked a fight with me. We've always got along very, very well. Jim Jesus and I kind of, I don't want to say bonded. We're not like personal friends, but like we really were both really in the anti-Venus Project crusade. We both were involved in that and kind of were allies in that regard. In fact, I got emailed a very long letter from the Jacques Fresco YouTube page that was very likely written by Roxanne Meadows, his handler for 50 years, and That letter is gone because it was in the YouTube message system, which is gone. But Jim Jesus posted it on his website. So if you want to find that letter, I'm glad that that was written. That was a very important letter, I think, because that revealed so much about the Venus Project fucking Marxist cult that was laid in the open in a way that it wasn't in any of their other material. And that was a chilling fucking letter. You were an ANCAP YouTuber before it was cool. I missed the wave. It was cool back in 2006 and 7. I started in 2011. I think that my channel would be much larger if I had started making videos 3 or 4 years earlier, but alas, I did not. That really was after the golden age of the YouTube ANCAPs. That age had really set before Ron Paul's second run, really. Um, Bolsonaro recently gave a mini speech where he said that he wants everyone in Brazil armed because an armed populace cannot be oppressed by a dictator. That would be a huge change for Brazil. They've been very anti-gun for a long time. Dude, the anarcho-capitalist Brazil YouTube, they have 600,000 subscribers, dude. Anarcho-capitalism is fucking popular there because Friedman isn't a radical. There we go. You said it in so many words fewer than me. Uh, have you read Russell Kirk's writing? Yes, I read the beginning of the Foundations of American Order and the Conservative Mind, and I am personally kind of connected to him because he lived in a very, very small town, very close to where I live, like 5 miles away is where his home is. It's still there. There's a library there and everything. It's a little town called Mecosta, Michigan, and I lived in Mecosta County, like I don't know, 5 miles from there. So I feel like I know exactly. I can think in my head exactly where his house was and everything. David Friedman is awesome, very much true. And if you come to Porcfest, you can meet him. I've been watching your content since 2012. Well, thank you, Will Adams. What do you think about it? Um, what do you agree with Roth? What do you disagree with Rothbard and Hop? Rothbard definitely was wrong about like child parent obligations, circumcision, um, probably copyright and or IP anyway. Um, and Hoppa was not wrong about anything as far as I know. Jim Jesus says the creature from. We already talked about this. Um, I think Hans Zimmer argumentation ethics is flawed. Like trying to prove to a killer not to murder you doesn't matter. Oh my gosh, you guys are so talkative tonight. I'm autistic and I'm obsessed with libertarian theory and Shakespeare. What are your thoughts on Shakespeare? I I think he's really the Duke of Bacon or whatever. He's actually Francis Bacon or something. Is that he does argue from that, but argumentation ethics specifically is a linguistic argument that alleges that you cannot argue without validating libertarian ethical norms. Tortoise, that sounds an awful lot like UPB. Um, Rothbard was pro-circ. Rothbard had some very fucked up ideas about child parents. Basically, parents have absolutely zero obligation to abortion. He was wrong about abortion too. Just bring that up. It's related, but parents have no obligation to their children. They can discard them, murder them when they're babies, throw them out in the street, but they have no obligations. But they also have complete authority. So your parents can circumcise you. They can teach you to be a Hasidic Jew. They can force you to do this, force you to do that. So it's like they're very similar to the government. They have no obligation, but they have complete authority over you. And I think that's kind of totally wrong. Um, Rothbard had stated his position on circumcision. Yeah, I think he was for it. That fell within, quote, parental rights. How long until the Merchant of Venice is banned for anti-Semitism? Yeah, good question. Did you see the discussion between? Yeah, I did, between Nick Fuentes and Dave Smith. Yes, I did. Good evening, secret communist. Good to see you. You're getting here a little late. I'm gonna have to do it 3 fucking hours. I'm gonna have to end this really soon, you guys. How will Porcfest be happening with coronavirus? It will be happening because we believe in liberty. Are you saying Rothbard wasn't right? Apparently, the overlap with autism and libertarianism is high. Well, I'm not autistic at all, so correlation does not equal causation. People, come on, that's not an argument. Uh, the Jeff Bezos class will genetically manipulate their children to be superhuman. The children of the middle and lower class will not stand a chance in the future. What do you? But there's already people who are vastly, there's people today that have IQs that are 160 and they're beautiful and they're rich. And that doesn't mean other people are doomed. So why is what you're talking about there different than what we already have, except in degree? So if all parents sold their kids to the government, Rothbard would be fine with the government. Uh, are there some artists and writers you adore but absolutely have horrible politics just because you care? Probably, but I don't. Well, I mean, like, I'm a Star Trek fan, and like, Gene Roddenberry is a fucking commie. Um, and it's in Star Trek, and it ruins Star Trek in certain places. I mean, very few movies are not made by are made by people who aren't leftists. So any movie I like is probably made by a leftist. All right, guys, 3 hours. I gotta go. Come to Parkfest. It's awesome. Link in the description. Everyone should go. It'd be a great time. It's going to be an authentic pork fest. No regulations, no government. Bring a gun. Bring your essential medications or whatever, and you'll meet me there. Yep. Well, length. I got here length, but would you disagree with the idea morality doesn't exist? My counter arguments aren't very strong. Not going there. Way too late. I said it's it. It's it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you're all doing well. Say congratulations to Luke because he's going to have a baby boy who he's not going to circumcise, so that's awesome. See you at Porkfest. If you have anything on foreskin or circumcision, look me up. I'll be there, and I'll talk to you all. Zero packs. I did a video on Star Trek. Look up Star Trek Socialist La La Land or something like that, because I think that you're wrong about that. But again, another time. All right, guys. Gotta go. Thanks.